I would like to call the meeting to order. As sitting in our Planning Commission, Monday, November 14th, 2022. Please call the roll.
Chair Moore.
Here.
Alder Holmquist. Here. Mr. Homburg.
Here.
Ms. Fox.
Here.
Mr. Conrad.
Here.
Mr. Stein. Here. Ms. Fallett.
Here.
And Mr. Grice is excused.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from October 24th, 2023?
Move approval. Second.
Seconds. Any changes, corrections, corrections?
I have two. The first one, you saw the title, but at the end of every public hearing, it says there were no other comments and the item was declared closed. And that could insinuate that the entire item was closed. I think it should, in each one of those, it should be no other comments and the public hearing was declared closed. Everyone says item, and if I were just, I would read it possibly the other way. And then page 4, middle paragraph, where it talked about the amount of right-of-way used. I said the right-of-way used in the proposal is okay given the precedent of using the right-of-way in other developments on, it should be Winona Drive, where we use the right-of-way all the time. Up and down Winona Drive all the way to Frost Woods, that's all wide right-of-way that we're parking in.
Anything else? Any other changes, corrections, additions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None is carried. I'll move on to appearances. We have Christy Goforth to speak. Check, so go ahead, Christy.
All right, thank you. Thanks for your time, everyone. I am here to speak against the Bloom project. I live on the corner of the Springhaven-Gordon Avenue intersection. That intersection right now sees so many conflict points. Lots of opportunity for conflict around Springhaven. You have conflict points when people are on Winona Drive turning left into Rockies and then turning left onto Springhaven because they don't line up properly, and so people are almost forced to turn into each other. So you have that. Around the school release hours, you also have a huge flow of inexperienced drivers going through that intersection with people turning in and out and people backing out of the laundromat. So I just feel like seeing an influx of 100 additional cars potentially coming in and out of that space, I don't see how that can ever possibly work. Right now, because I have a front seat view of Springhaven and just seeing all the conflicts that happen there, all hours of the day and night, it really actually seems like Springhaven should be closed to through traffic. I feel like that's probably something our engineering department should look at. So I know there was a traffic study done in the summer when the students were not in session, so I think that should definitely be reconsidered. The other reason I'm opposed to this is because of the market rate apartments. All of our housing studies done, I believe, over the past 10, 12 years have talked about a few things, and those being the need for diverse housing, which this does provide. I support that. But the fact that it's market rate, the other point is that all of the studies have said that we need to have more affordable housing option. Market rates apartments in this era, I think, is just irresponsible. There's no checks and balances for developers, and they can charge whatever they want, and they will get it because we have a housing crisis. We have a housing affordability crisis as well. And so if this were, had an affordable housing component to it, I would be much more inclined to support it. But the fact that this is going to change the flavor of my neighborhood, which is really one of the more diverse neighborhoods in the city of Winona, I think is really something to reconsider. So I urge you to vote against this project.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? We only have one sheet. Is there anyone else that's here to speak during the public session? Is there anyone online in the Zoom meeting that is here for an appearance that actually doesn't relate to the Bloom project, because you can speak during the public hearing as well if you like? Is there anyone else online? If so, raise your hand online. close the appearance section and move to unfinished business. 5A, the public hearing for rezoning request and map amendment from Retail Business District, Monona Municipal Code of Ordinances, Section 48028, to Community Design District, Monona Municipal Code of Ordinances, Section 48030, approximately 4601 to 4711 Monona Drive, between Spring Haven and Dean Avenue, as requested by the Newton Project and Compass Properties, case number 2-021-2022. The podium is yours. Whoever you would like to speak. Yeah.
I don't have any presentation for the rezoning. I just have a presentation for the GDP.
Right.
So we're just, as you said, asking for a rezoning.
Okay. Okay.
Development.
Okay.
And we'll go through CSM, which we have JT Engineering here for.
Okay.
And we'll go through our full presentation for the GDP.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Anyone here to speak on the rezoning? Then we will close the public hearing and go to 5B, consideration of action and approval. Recommendation to the City Council for approval of a rezoning request and map amendment from Retail Business District, Monona Municipal Code of Ordinances, Section 48028, to Community Design District, Monona Municipal Code of Ordinances, Section 48030, at approximately 4601 to 4711 Monona Drive, between Spring Haven and Dean Avenue, as requested by the Neutral Project and Compass Properties, case number 2-021-2022. So with that, I'll turn it over to
Thank you. So, as mentioned, the request here is for rezoning and map amendments. The total site area is just over 2.2 acres, and that is currently zoned retail business. The proposal here is to rezone it to the Community Design District for the proposed development to be able to utilize the planned community development framework. The application proposes 83 apartment units divided across 2 buildings, as well as 10 townhomes facing Gordon Avenue. In addition, there would be 16,000 square feet of ground floor commercial space. A pre-hearing for the rezoning request was held at the August 22nd, 2022 Planning Commission meeting, and the rezoning request needs to be considered prior to formal deliberation of the general development plan, as well as the precise implementation plan. Public notice was sent for the pre-hearing and was also sent to adjacent property owners for formal consideration, as well as a Class 2 notice in the Herald Independent. And as mentioned, the pre-hearing occurred in August. The current zoning of Retail Business District only allows for ancillary residential and is not appropriate for the proposed mix of retail and residential that's being put forward. The Community Design District, as defined in the ordinance, would include a compatible mix of residential, commercial, industrial, or open space uses which realize the goals of the comprehensive plan. That comprehensive plan shows these parcels as commercial in both the current and future land use maps, and the Commission has previously discussed both the density of the site as well as the proposed ground floor uses and the mix of those two. Feedback at the pre-hearing in August was supportive from the Commission, and the recommendation from City staff is recommendation of approval to the Monona City Council. Thank you.
Thank you. That I will open it up the Commission. Chris, would you like to start? Chris 1, would you like to start?
Yeah, irregardless of the project that's being proposed for there, I think it's the appropriate zoning for that corner. Whatever goes there, that'd be the right zoning.
Okay.
So,
Great.
in favor.
Great. Corey?
I have no further comments.
Okay.
I'm good.
Okay. Rob?
No comment.
Brian?
I agree with the changes.
Okay. Susan?
Yep, also agree, no comments.
Okay. Great. Being said, do I have a motion?
I'll move recommendation to the City Council for approval of a rezoning request.
Okay. Great. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Number 5C, public hearing on the request by the Neutral Project Encompass Properties for consideration of a certified survey map, CSM, for the site located approximately 4601, 4711 Monona Drive between Springhaven and Dean Avenue for mixed-use development, case number 2-022-2022.
So the CSM is in front of you. And we also have JT Engineering. Dylan is here, and then we have James on Zoom. We went in front of Public Works twice over the past 4 months for 2 items. One was for approval of the CSM. The other item was for parking along Springhaven, and both of those were approved by Public Works and will be clarified in the development agreement. So, any questions on the CSM for JT Engineering?
Okay. If we don't have any other presentation per se on the CSM, I'll close the public hearing, and then we can go ahead and move to the next item, which is consideration of action on the CSM.
Perfect.
So unless any of your group has something else to add on the CSM.
No, just here for questions.
Okay, great. Then we will close the public hearing and move to consideration of action on the request by Neutral Project Encompass Properties for certified survey map for the site located approximately 4601, 4711 Monona Drive between Springhaven and Dean Avenue for mixed-use development, case number 2-022-2022.
Thank you. The proposed CSM here would consolidate the existing lots into 2 new lots and facilitate phase development of the mixed-use project, as previously mentioned. As part of the process, a recommendation by the city's Public Works Committee is also required. Public Works Committee reviewed the request at their October 5th meeting and unanimously recommended approval of the CSM. Additionally, a pre-hearing conference was held with the Plan Commission again at the August 22nd, 2022 meeting. Formal consideration by the City Council would follow any recommendation by the Plan Commission. The applicant is requesting the use of a portion of the city right-of-way for vehicle parking as part of the project. This request was heard at the November Public Works Committee meeting, and the committee recommended approval of the use with conditions. A draft copy of those minutes are included in the meeting packet for reference and greater background. Generally, the proposal is to maintain a very similar use that is currently and design that is currently in process. It's expected that those conditions and any requirements would be encompassed within the GDP or PIP, but I just wanted to mention it here, and that information is included in the packet. The proposed lots front Gordon Avenue and have access to Dean Avenue and Springhaven Avenue through a 24-foot shared access easement. Gordon Avenue is 60 feet in width, Springhaven is 50, and Dean Avenue is 57.75 at the southwest corner. Commission has previously discussed that they're comfortable with the street widths given their existing conditions. Typically, that would need to be 60 feet in width, 60, but again, given their existing conditions, the Commission was generally comfortable. A couple easements are proposed in the documentation. The 24-foot shared access easement running north-south through the development, as well as a 6-foot access easement for the new public sidewalk parallel to Springhaven Avenue, which would be on the applicant's property. Additionally, an 8,700 square foot stormwater easement is proposed from across the south half of the site that would benefit both of the proposed parcels. The applicant is proposing to release some private utility easements as well as one city access and utility easement upon closing and before the CSM recording. And this documentation should be shared with city staff after any potential recommendation and certainly prior to any recording. And with that, the recommendation is recommendation to City Council of approval of the 2-lot certified survey map with 4 conditions. Thank you.
Thank you. For that, we will move to the commission. Chris, would you like to start?
Sure. Is there a representative from JT Engineering here? Okay, question. You've seen our consulting engineers' review of your CSM and all their conditions or the comments they had?
Yes, and James is online. He's a surveyor.
Okay. So my question is, you've seen the review. Do you have any comments or issues with any of the comments our reviewer had? Dear Becker?
No, I was reviewing them. The vast majority is just related to appearance. So those are things that are very easy to address.
I agree. I just want to make sure there's no conflicts there between what his opinion was and yours.
No, I see nothing fundamental with it. Again, most, if not all, of the comments just pertain to the aesthetics
Okay. And then
of the map itself.
my only other comment would be, this is a very specific CSM, very specific to if those townhomes, for example, get built. So I'm wondering if there should be a condition of approval of the Bloom project. Otherwise, there's going to be a CSM out there that doesn't really, it's set
It
up
applies to
specifically.
only this project, is what you're
Right.
saying, right?
And I would assume the applicant probably wouldn't record the CSM if they didn't get approval on the Bloom project.
Yeah, that's correct.
So I just think we should just have another condition that's conditioned on approval of the Bloom project. It would make sense, because the CSM doesn't make sense without the Bloom project.
Right. Court?
I have no comments.
Okay. Chris?
No.
No? Mark?
My only question was regarding the utility easements that were identified in the Public Works meeting, and that Public Works did not support the request to vacate those easements, which two of them on the northeast and southeast corner make sense, but is there any potential conflict with that one in the middle that goes underneath your building?
The Public Works agreed that that one would be vacated, and the other ones should remain.
Okay.
Can we turn his mic up a little?
Okay.
Rob, I can speak to that. That's accurate. The northeast, southeast corners are the ones that remain. The one in the middle is to be
Vacated. Okay. That's the only comment I had.
Ryan?
no additional comments.
No additional comments other than the clarification of do the ones remaining include the fire hydrants? I just saw that was raised as an issue, so they do. Okay. That's all.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
Move approval with recommendation as listed by staff. There are 4 conditions, and add condition 5 that this is conditioned on approval of the Bloom project.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a second from Alan. Any other discussion?
Can I just ask a point of clarification?
Yes.
Clarification on the 5th condition, would that be, it was conditioned on approval of the Bloom project, would that be GDP, PIP? Is there a
Yes.
cause to be specific, or?
Well, they don't have a project if the PIP isn't approved.
Right, so it would be both.
Okay.
Can we make a condition on the GDP?
Would you record the survey without approval to build that building?
Well, depending on how long we take to approve the PIP, we might.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Then you control the lots, you own them?
We will in a few weeks, yeah.
Okay, so then you would be the owner when you
When we record,
when you
correct?
record it.
Yeah.
And-
The concern I have is we'll get
Yeah.
hopefully GDP approval tonight, but we're not going for PIP tonight, so
No.
we might want to record between now and PIP approval.
Okay, as long as you own the lots.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I have a motion and a second. New condition. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. And it takes us to 5E, public hearing on the Neutral Project and Compass Properties on the request for approval of a general development plan, GDP, for the site located at approximately 4601, 4711 Winona Drive, between Springhaven and Dean Avenue, for mixed-use development, case number 2-016-2021. Go ahead, Nate.
If you can flip to slide 4, that's where we'll start.
We actually got some feedback that I think your mic was a little quiet. Can we just check with folks on Zoom that that everybody can hear the
Yeah,
applicant.
they put a
Can you
new
hear me
mic
now?
out after that came through. I'm wondering.
I can hear everyone.
Okay,
Testing.
thank you.
Yeah.
Great.
All right, well, I will quickly go through my section because I think this is the fourth time I've been through it. But I know you love to hear me talk, so I'll go through it one more time. So we're developing the Bloom Nona Drive, as you know, and we are developing it in a sustainable manner, following our guidelines under the neutral standard. And we've actually recently, between our last meeting and now, decided to go for a certification. And so for each development, we look at different certifications that we want to do. And we'll look at LEED, we'll look at Passive House, we'll look at others. And we decided to go with CITES, which is another USGB certification process, but it's more focused on the landscape and environment and really adhering to the surroundings and making sure that we're a good neighbor and that we develop a sustainable site. And so Jeanette is here tonight. She's going to speak on it a little bit more. She's our landscape designer, and she's also site certified, so she'll be going through the whole sites process. But from our last meeting, there was a big impetus by the commission on landscaping, and so we wanted to kind of acknowledge that and go through the site certification process that really focuses on water management and sustainable landscape. And so we've created, you'll see it later on in the presentation, a whole cool landscaping programming that's really kind of adhering to the neighbors' sustainability and making sure we have really nice landscape for our tenants. So you can flip to the next slide. So with the building, we're still looking at, right now we're going through 2 different structural studies, and we're looking at a new structural system that's pretty cool, I'm excited about. And it's CLT floors, so cross-laminated timber floors with stick frame walls. And what that does is it significantly reduces our embodied carbon impact because we're using wood. And so we're looking at this structural system. If we don't use that, we'll probably just go to a traditional type 5 construction, which is still really good for sustainability. But we want to use the CLT so that when our tenants come in, they'll be able to look up at the ceiling and see this beautiful wood ceiling. So we're looking at those studies right now. We should have that done by PIP, and we'll be able to report back to you guys of what we decide. You can flip to the next slide. So this is just kind of our guidelines, the things that we focus on, which is mass timber, passive house, photovoltaic, solar, green roofs, and transportation. One of the things we're looking at with our solar consultant right now is putting solar on the roof and then using that energy to actually heat our hot water heating. And so it's kind of like solar thermal, but we're using photovoltaic solar to be able to just take the energy and directly heat our water source. So that's one of the cool sustainable things we're looking at for this project. Another thing we're doing, which we'll talk about later on, is EV. And so we're going to have zip cars and EV charging stations and EV stations for the cars for our tenants to be able to use and then come back and have it at the building. You can flip to the next slide. So water management, we talked about this a little bit before. I'll let Jeanette talk on it a little bit more because she's the expert here and I'm not. We can flip to the next slide. And then livability. One of the big things that we liked about sites, and one of the reasons why we decided to go with sites as our certification process, is because it has this huge impetus on livability. And it has a huge points, actually, verification process for incorporating things like fitness into the development. So one of the things we're probably going to do is add an outdoor yoga studio where people can come and have yoga, or they can do a workout or something like that. That will incorporate that fitness as a part of the development. You can flip to the next slide. And I'll let Jeanette talk more about sites. This is just the scorecard. You can flip to the next slide. Perfect. Next one. So you guys know where it is. It's right on Monona Drive. And we'll flip through these quite quickly. And then we'll hand it over to Doug to talk through our updated massing and renderings. You can flip to the next slide. Next one, you guys don't know where it is. Next one. Next one. Next one. Next one. Next one. Perfect. So this is where I'm going to hand it over to Doug. One of the things the commission asked of us last time is for us to look at a solar study and a sun study to understand where the shading is. And so that's in your packet. After this one, there's different times of the day and different times of the year as well for you guys to look at how the shading works with the neighborhood. So that's something we definitely want to be very conscientious of tonight. And so ask as many questions as you like. Doug is going to present on this, and then I'll come back when it's done. Doug, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for the time for hearing our project. So yes, as Nate just said, we definitely want to be conscious of the shading both on-site and off-site, and want to definitely make a project that is really an inviting project in terms of its let's say public spaces that it offers, not only for the tenants but also for the community at large to engage there, and thus of course having enough daylight and sunlight on all of those public spaces is important to us. So if we flip next, and is it Doug that's navigating this? I mean, can I just say next?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, great. So as you see here, the two different L's are figured in slightly different forms. The one to the north having that stepping going down as it goes towards Gordon in order to minimize the amount of shadow that it casts towards the north. And also there's stepping on the north side of the south building to minimize the amount of shading in that public access space in the center between the two L's. So for us, that's really quite important in the sense that those are, say, the main green spaces of the project that we try to give them as much daylight as possible throughout the year. Next. So of course you know the site in its current zoning, and we're going for rezoning, so this will be obsolete if we go to the next. We're maintaining as requested, a 14-foot setback around the site. Next. And again, trying to step the building in these different locations to break up the massing and make it feel more residential for the neighborhood, and really give it this kind of character of these carved spaces and terraces on the rooftop, and give it this something that feels much more residential than commercial. Next. And you can see it here more clearly with the townhouses facing what is currently the more residential side. So it's really, again, as we've discussed with you a few times, a two-sided project, and our goal is to navigate both of those faces, one being a very public commercial avenue in the city, the other being a much more quiet neighborhood residential single-family house community aspect of the project. And so in the two different architectural styles that merge with one another, as we'll see later in the project, we try to blend those two aspects together. Next. So here's the basement. We have a potential cistern for water collection at the north, and then we have basically purely parking and storage, etc. A few tenant spaces, and of course mechanical in the basement. Next, but we're trying to minimize the amount of basement area, both for cost savings and also for impact on the site itself, to dig as little as possible. Next. So really, like, the project in our minds has evolved from the ground floor, because this is the most important aspect of the project, as it's the space that the community engages with. It's the space in which the tenants function and have exterior space to the northwest, or in the center of the project between the two L-shaped buildings, as well as managing an efficient parking and driving system, especially for the bank to the southeast. And so we've really again worked on the plan to maximize the amount of parking, and of course Jeanette will go into much further detail on all of the aspects of the landscape, be it the vegetation, the circulation of water, etc., use of materials. So we will let her get into that, but just to say that the ground floor has been much more rethought in terms of its public use. Next. And then in terms of mixture of units, we're still proposing what we had proposed before, which is a range between studios to 3 bedrooms, with an emphasis on studios and 1 bedrooms, given that that's going to be a bigger demand, and then of course 2 to 3 bedrooms as well. Next, and as you see as we go up, and then next again, as you go through the plans and you see the white spaces on the perimeter, these are terraces, both public and private for the apartments, as well as some public amenities within the top floor to really give tenants let's say a feeling of community within this project. And of course on the left, we're all townhouses, all similar style in terms of their interior layout, with back-facing patios and front-facing porches. Next. And then this shows attempts at solar array, and we'll have a green roof system that is still to be explored, the exact size and area of it, and type. But much of this, we'll try to use as much green roof as possible. Next. This, per the request of the Planning Commission last time, is an alternative plan that, should the amount of parking not fulfill the daily requirement, if it's getting too full or backed up, to add additional parking in that northwest garden space. However, of course, it's our ideal scenario that we just simply keep that, and as you'll see later, we will show you numbers on parking and the daily demand to speak on that issue, but we'll address that later. Next. And then you can see here in the elevations, we're considering a variety of materials, mostly brick, on the exterior with a kind of metal shingle, or it could be also alternatively a fiber cement panel on the 4th floor to differentiate that 4th floor and not make the building break up the kind of monolithic feeling, so that each level has really its own kind of character, which we'll see later in the renderings, and then even the corner of BMO being as well in a route and return panel, metal panel, so even a different material there. So really trying to, let's say, break the material massing, or the massing down of the building through materiality as well as the massing itself. Next, and of course geometry of the pitched roof townhouses in back being much more relatable to the pitched roofs of the neighborhood itself. Next. So you can see there's also this this insistence on a kind of grid-like language of the project that we feel speaks to this kind of gridded suburban ideology of the Jeffersonian plan of the United States, and really, we think that comes down to a granular scale as well of even the individual apartment, and so it doesn't stop at simply the urban planning, but it comes down to the spaces that are created within the site and then the apartments themselves. Next. And here you can see the differentiation of the townhomes and how they have this much more vernacular language of the city, or the residential aspect of the site itself, with these dormers that pop out of the roof and balconies. And again, we'll see all of this in images, but we want to make this much more characteristic of a kind of residential language that fits more with let's say, the context to the east of the site. Sorry, the west. I don't like you saying east. Next. And we'll pass it on to Dylan, and you can speak on the civil aspects of the project.
Yeah, so, I don't have a mic.
You actually need to go up there anyway.
So from the site, circulation, most of the traffic will run north and south through the site on that access drive. We've got parking in the southwest corner of the site for the majority of the parking, as well as parking in between the townhomes and the two multi-use buildings. The garden in the northwest part of the site, Janet will touch on later. Generally, the stormwater flows from the northeast portion of the site to the southwest portion of the site, where we'll tie in to the storm sewer. Raised crosswalks on the southern portion of the site near the BMO drive-through entrance. That's to provide traffic safety, get traffic to slow down before they make the crossing. Pervious pavement will be included in the site to help with stormwater. Bioinfiltration to handle suspended solids. And I think that's mostly it from a civil perspective.
You can go to the next slide, next section. Yep. I think commission members, you have this in your packet. Next we have landscape, which Jeanette is going to speak on. And then I'll wrap up with one item on parking. And then we'll open it up for discussion. All right, come on.
Yeah.
I'm Janet Silbernagel. Really happy to be part of this project. I have a background in ecology and landscape architecture, and as Nate mentioned, am a site accredited professional, so that's the perspective I bring to this. Next slide. This is a site, the overall site plan. I'm going to go into each of the component parts in the next few slides, but just to give you a picture on the left of kind of the overall layout of that, and then on the right, I know in your packets, hopefully you can read those labels more closely, but we'll look at some of those individually. Next slide. So I want to focus on 3 different areas within the site. The plaza, the edible garden on the northwest, and rainwater collection throughout the site. And I guess if I would add one more, it would be the south parking lot. Next slide. So we'll start with the plaza area. These are just some concepts that are from other places, other sites that we use as precedents to inspire this, what we might do here. And they illustrate some, on the left, some floating wood decking that kind of floats over a patio space. That component kind of running right into a patio or plaza. And on the right are, that site is designed by a firm called Herbert Dreisaitl, and they are well known for their use of water in the landscape and environmental use of water. So what they did there is some infiltration planters at ground level through those kind of gridded concrete blocks, which again kind of ties in with the gridded look that Douglas described in the architecture. Next. So how that lays out on the plaza. A couple things there. We've got the rain garden collecting water on the top left of your screen that flows into kind of imagine a dry stream bed running through that linear green part and then flowing into a space that could collect more water and higher rain events, with some native flowering trees along the parking lot there to the left of that rain garden. The brown is the sustainable wood decking that flows through at different places, and we propose to use there's a black locust decking, which is one of the So real wood, and it's one of the most sustainable, long-lasting wood products for decking. There's a company called Robo Decking that you can look up that offers the black locust material. And then the big gray squares would be concrete plaza pavers. They're like 10 foot by 6 foot and variations of that size that kind of block out into and across that plaza area with the wood decking connecting pieces of that and the garden almost below the plaza. So you're on the plaza looking down at a green carpet or the rain garden and have this feeling that you're floating or walking above it throughout. And that those concrete pavers would have space then for patio tables, cafe tables, and such. So over on the right, it gets a little, we expect it to be a little less often wet, and so that would be more of like a sedum type of ground cover for that green carpet. Next. This is just a bird's eye view from the southwest corner looking into that plaza area. Next. And then a little bit closer to ground level from pretty much near the BMO Harris building or space right outside of it. So you get a sense of how users would be kind of just above this little bit of a sunken garden. And then there, just go back one. There you can see the flowering ornamental trees, native trees, so like serviceberry, something like that along that edge. Next. Okay, so the next focus area is the edible garden, and here we're taking off some examples from French gardens. So the potager is a style used throughout France called the kitchen garden, where you can go right out your door and collect all the materials for a meal in the kitchen. And so we liked this particular style, the way that it was very rectangular and at ground level. That's, again, just an example from another site. And then along with the potager, you often have a wall of espalier fruit trees. So there's like a vertical trellis, and the trees are pruned very tight against that trellis. So we are employing both of those concepts in our edible garden, which we can see on the next slide. Okay, so the northwest corner of the site, we've got, first of all, it is the northwest corner, so that's where we want to protect not only from the street but from cold winds with a conifer windbreak around that top corner. And then have a bit of an open space in there with some seating benches and a very small amount of lawn area. Also, tying in that idea of the wood decking, there's an entrance to the garden area from the Spring Haven entrance to this vehicle entrance right in the middle. And possibly permeable paving on that north street. But then in the southern half of the garden, we've got the potager style garden beds with this espalier wall on the Gordon Street side, right? And then, very importantly, 3 existing sugar maples there that we want to keep. They're in good shape, and they provide a really nice buffer there between the garden and the townhomes. And then again, collecting rainwater and bringing it down through the street or the access drive side of the garden. And we'll see more of that in future slides. Next. Okay, so bird's eye view looking into the garden area here. And next. go down closer to ground level from the first townhome entrance, where you can see an idea of what the espalier would look like, again, as a transition from the street to the gardens, and then also tying into these hedge-like fences between the street and the townhomes. So there would be a gate opening into each townhome along that front hedge. Next. Okay, so the third focus area today is the rainwater collection. This really applies across the whole site. So then hold on this slide, but in the next slide, you will see how the flow is captured throughout the site. And some of the concepts we're using here are taken from Valencia Lofts in Middleton, which is a project that I worked on years ago, and we collected rainwater through these repurposed trusses that come down the side of the building and into these stepped concrete troughs, and then directly into a rain garden. And this is still functioning very well. This is a recent picture I took. So I shared that with the team, and they liked a variation of that, minus the trusses here. So we're going to incorporate something like that. And then again, this Herb Dreiseidel firm in Germany that specializes in water in the landscape, just a sample of one of the troughs that they've used in their landscapes for allowing water to flow across the surface and be visible and be a part of the design. So next slide. So here we see just in the bright blue where the water is collected and flowing, and it's really in 3 different paths. So first, along the north and east sides is a series of bioretention basins and bioswales that would be planted with native prairie, wet prairie mix. And they are serving as quite a bit of stormwater collection. Particularly, is it the first 2, Dylan, that are engineered bioretentions? Yeah. The second water flow path is the one you see through the plaza. So that picks up at the north side of the plaza by collecting, capturing roof rainwater, and then it flows into that larger rain garden. I wouldn't call it a pond, but I don't expect that there would often be standing water in this. So imagine it, again, more as a dry stream bed, but that has the potential to capture and hold water when there is a lot of rain. And then the third path is through the garden, and then slightly disconnected from that, but each of the townhomes, as a division between their driveways, would have one of those roof rainwater collection stepped walls to a trough, like I showed at Valencia. And then that would run down the side of that drive and into a stormwater basin. So next, images of these. So where these are, again, the rain garden, on the garden, the bioswales, bioretention basins, the roof rainwater walls, trough. Yeah, oh, and yeah, that's good. Okay, next slide. This is a view looking at that flow through the plaza area. Next. And a pie overview of the plaza area. This one I think I captured because I didn't have another very good view of the townhome walls, but you can kind of see that looking down on those from this height. Next. Okay, so here is then we're moving into what the plant materials would be and how they meet the city's ordinances for green space. So we have, on this page, I've just broken them out by those focus areas. So first we have, in the plaza, we have a set of small native flowering trees, 6 of those, Amelanker or serviceberry. In the plaza rain garden, we'd have the low wet meadow with native forbs and carex or sedge. And the plaza green carpet would be some other kind of ground cover. And then in the garden area, we have a windbreak with larger conifer trees and large conifer shrubs. Then the espalier with fruit trees. And the rain garden with a medium mesic prairie of native forbs and grasses. And of course the garden beds with vegetables. And then on the townhome walls, we would have, in addition to that water collection, we would have climbing perennials. And then throughout the bioswales, again, the mesic prairie. And then in the south parking lot, we will also have some small native flowering shrubs. And lastly, along Gordon Street, we do have 2 more trees to save there. There's a crabapple tree, and I think a purple leaf sand cherry, just kind of right on the middle edge of the Gordon Street side of the south parking lot. So those would be saved, and then we will add a few other trees along that side. Next. So by my calculations of the above ground parking stalls, we would need 5 canopy trees, which we have easily achieved, and I'll show that in the next slide. And then the maximum landscape element standards, using the 64 spaces, which I may have undercounted, but we would, and 15 points per space, we would need 960 points. So that takes us to my last slide. And so here I've broken down the plant materials that sort of the first approximation of what our plant materials would be and how they fit the landscape elements. So we've got 5 canopy trees. That includes the 3 existing maple and the existing crab and sand cherry. For other canopy trees in the plaza, we have the serviceberry, and then on Gordon Street, 2 more crataegus or hawthorn and 2 more prunus or sand cherries or similar. For evergreen trees, we would have 3 in the garden windbreak, and then jump down under tall shrubs, 2 more juniper. Low ornamental trees, I counted the espalier trees, as well as a couple of tall shrubs, small trees of something like a flowering dogwood in the plaza area. And then medium shrubs, we've got a few in the, well, we've got 9 in the south parking area, 3 clusters of 3. And then, so that's all that I counted, which comes to 879 points. What that does not count is the 12 existing street trees along Monona Avenue and Dean Avenue, nor does it count any of the perennials throughout the bioswales, the climbing perennials on the walls, the garden vegetables, and the hedges in front of the townhomes. So we're hoping that either between the street trees or the richness of the perennials, that we could count some of those for additional points. And then that was my last slide. But if you want to go back to and have me explain more about that site scorecard that Nathan may jump past, we can do that as well. There are 10 different credit areas, and I was keeping those at the forefront of my design planning throughout this process. So, yeah, I'll just tell you what the 10 categories are. First is site context, which is kind of a done deal, but we would gain credits because we're developing an already built and an already developed space. Pre-design and assessment is that we're working as an interdisciplinary team. But then, most importantly at this stage, are categories 3, 4, 5, and 6. So 3 is site design and water. That's kind of creative ways that, well, first of all, the rows that are in light blue are requirements. You absolutely have to meet those. And then the ones in white are additional credits that you can earn. So for site design and water, we have to manage precipitation on site, and we have to reduce water use for landscape irrigation. Above that, we can do more creative things with water use, which I think we have tried to do on this site design. For instance, designing functional stormwater features as amenities and managing precipitation beyond baseline. So category 4 is soil and vegetation. So that means we're not going to use invasive plants, of course. We have to communicate a soil management plan. Beyond that, we will do things like conserve and use native plants, optimize biomass, reduce urban heat island effects, and use vegetation to minimize building energy use. So category 5 is the material selection, which has to do with using sustainably sourced materials like the wood decking that I spoke about. And then category 6, Nate also mentioned, that has to do with livability, human health and well-being. So things like site accessibility, safety, wayfinding, equitable site use, mental restoration, supporting physical activity, social connection, and on-site food production are all pretty important to this site design and factored in. And then as we go further, we can look at things like reducing light pollution, and the selection of, well, we will have fuel efficient and multimodal transportation connections right there, and hope to be sort of supporting the local economies through our through the construction and material selection. So then the last few go into the next stages. That would be construction, operation, and maintenance. There we go. Any questions?
Thank you. No, at this point we're just taking in all of your presentation.
Doug, I think there's one before this that I wanted to jump into, and then we'll wrap it up here. So based on the final site plan, we did a final parking demand study, which you're seeing in front of you, which came back really, really good with the parking count we have right now. And if you look at this, even if you take out the 19 stalls that we'll have on Springhaven that Public Works approves, we still don't have any time of day where we exceed our parking, which is really good for us. So this is one of the things we like to do to kind of justify our reduction in parking, and it came back and it proved correct. So you can flip to the next slide. So I think last time we had 10 items up here that we threw at you, and you gave us ideas, comments. You said these are bad ideas. Don't bring any of them back. This sucks. No, I'm just kidding. So we brought 4 back that we like, and we thought that you guys liked, hopefully. So the first was the EV car share program. That's just for our residents. And so they'll have an app, they'll be able to go check out a Tesla, drive it, grab groceries, bring it back, check it back in. The next is the community car. So that's for the tenants if they want it, or it's for the residents, the neighbors, anyone who wants it. We'll have one on the Springhaven right next to the garden, and then we'll probably have 2 or 3 more depending on demand, but we're just going to start with one. And this is the Zipcar program that we're going to go through. So Zipcar will be providing the software and the car and the support. We'll just be providing the space for that. The next one was future flexible parking, which I don't like at all. But after we just got done with the beautiful presentation from Jeanette, if you wanted to scrap all of her ideas with her nice potager garden, you can put parking in and we can get up to our accounts. The last one is the EV bike and scooter share. That's the same thing as the Teslas. The residents will have an app. They'll be able to go check out a bike, a scooter, take it out, drive it around the neighborhood, bring it back, check it back in. So those are our 4 ideas that we'll implement. The one I very, very much do not like is number 3. But if you guys say we have to do that, we'll take the plans, throw them in the garbage, and put parking in. So you can flip to the next slide. So this is what we do. So we have a nice potager garden on the left, and that would be kind of base case. And then on the right, we would either scratch the garden, build the parking right now, or have some sort of condition, which we'd have to figure out with staff, of having the parking in place as far as plan goes, but we wouldn't be building it. We'd be building the beautiful garden for the neighbors. The parking then would be kind of post factum, and we'd probably be coming back here, and we had a ton of complaints from the neighbors saying we're getting a ton of parking on the street, and we'd have to come back and post factum build this parking. But the initial base case would be a nice potager garden. You can flip to the next slide. Next one. Yeah, and then this is just a couple of massings that we went through prior that we were just bringing back. So you can flip through these pretty quickly, Doug. And this is just looking at the surrounding buildings above 40 feet. And I think that wraps it up for us.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We are in the that's my agenda. We're in the public hearing portion of the EP. Is there anybody else that wanted to speak on during the public hearing section? Okay, we'll close the public hearing section and go to number F, consideration of action. The Newton project Compass Properties on the request for approval of the GDP general development plan for the site located approximately 4601, 4711 Menard Drive between Springhaven and Dean Avenue for a mixed-use development. Case number 2-016-2021.
Thank you. I'll just run through this so that we cover kind of the main points. Some of this will be duplicative, but just for the record effectively. So the proposal here is the demolition of the existing buildings and the construction of a 4-story mixed-use development along Monona Drive with detached townhomes facing Gordon Avenue. 2.2-acre site that is bound by Springhaven to the north, Monona to the east, Gordon Avenue to the west, and West Dean to the south. Plans call for 2 4-story mixed-use buildings with 83 market-rate apartments and 16,000 square feet of ground floor commercial space. There'll be 1 3-story 10-unit townhome, as well as 172 parking spaces with at-grade and underground spaces. The zoning for the site is currently retail business. As discussed earlier this evening, a recommendation has now been made to rezone this to Community Design District, CDD, that would allow the applicant to pursue a planned community development for the project. There have been 4 pre-hearings specifically for the GDP. Those were listed in the staff report included in the packet. Most recently, discussion happened in late August of this year, and plans included an increased amount of surface parking, revised site design at grade, as well as some changes to the units, the number of balconies, for example, the community park to the northwest corner, Generally, the commission were supportive of the design, discussion about parking, specifically the at-grade and how to potentially meet city ordinances for that. In terms of the schedule, concurrent negotiations are ongoing with the city's Community Development Authority, the CDA, for a TIF request, and that's also being considered at the meetings that are happening monthly at this point. As far as the zoning and land use, the comprehensive plan, the 2016 comp plan, classifies the property as commercial use in both current and future land use maps, which is defined as land use for retail, service, commercial, and office uses. As mentioned, the unit mix would be 83 market rate rental units, which would include a range of unit types varying from studios all the way through to 3-bedroom units. Additionally, 10 townhomes, which at this point could be either rental or for sale. In terms of the ground floor uses, in the mixed-use buildings facing Monona Drive, it would include the existing BMO Harris Bank at the southeast corner of the site with drive-through lanes, and there's an additional drive-through lane as compared to the August 2022 submittal. Additionally, there would be a restaurant and business incubator as part of Building A, which would be the southern building, and then Building B would include a cafe, resident fitness center, and resident co-working space as well. The commercial space, including the resident-only uses, is approximately 16,000 square feet, which is an increase, again, from the August 2022 submittal. The site design, typical green space target for the city is 30%, 30, and there is 31% of open green space at grade, with an additional 10% including the green roof. The submittal includes an alternative design which would remove approximately 1,200 square feet of open green space in the northwest corner for additional parking as needed, and I believe permeable pavers were discussed as an option there, should that be needed. Setbacks have been discussed for the site, and as was shown in the presentation, a minimum setback of 14 feet is maintained across the entire property line, with a 5-foot setback along the western property line. So 14 along the other 3 faces and 5 feet along the western. In terms of circulation, mostly unchanged except for the additional drive-through lane at BMO Harris. The site plans do include a sidewalk around the entirety of the site for pedestrian access, including along Gordon Avenue, which as compared to current conditions, some of the sidewalks are proposed within city right-of-way, and so dedication or easements should be discussed during a potential PIP process. The parking calculations are included in the staff report, and a total of 172 stalls are proposed, with 84 of those surface, 88 underground, including the 1 Zipcar as currently shown. With the alternative, there would be 185 stalls shown. And so, as needed by the city ordinance, it would be 179.6, or 180. So the applicant is looking for an exception, but as mentioned, they have multiple options to help alleviate some of that, as well as the parking demand study that has been completed. That includes the Zipcar, the car share service, as well as some alternative non-motorized options as well. Additionally, some information was shared in the letter of application about the impact that a Zipcar can have in terms of the removal of demand for personal vehicles. And a Zipcar 2021 report showed that 1 Zipcar can replace up to 13 personal vehicles. The TIA traffic impact analysis was completed for the site, and that showed demand at different intersections around the site, and as part of that, no changes were recommended to existing infrastructure as a result of the proposed development. The plans themselves include a public green plaza at the midpoint of the block, breaking the massing and providing enhanced green space. Stepped massing also has been used for the apartment buildings to help reduce the perceived scale, and again, the townhomes along Gordon Avenue are much more appropriate for the buildings across the street, the traditional single-family neighborhood feel there. The community garden space with garden plots is also proposed at the northwest corner as an additional community gathering space. I updated the densities as well in the staff report and compared that to other projects that have been approved within the city. As proposed, the 93 units in total, including the townhomes, would equate to just over 42 units per acre, which compares very similarly to the recently approved Owen Road GDP. High-quality materials are stipulated within the Monona Drive Urban Design Guidelines, which this project falls within, and the masonry exterior follows that. Brick, as well as metal shingle facade, would use a varying array of mortar types to provide a graduation between the levels, breaking up the massing of the building again. And again, the stepped massing is another element that is recommended within the design guidelines. A lot of elements, sustainable elements, have been discussed, including the site's certification, and that would be pursued for both the construction of the building as well as the operations. Stormwater plans have not been shared with the city's consulting engineer at the time. At this time, it was mentioned by city staff that the potential determination may need to impact some of the ground floor design, depending upon redevelopment versus new development. But it was just something that was suggested to me to mention at this point. Again, would be captured during a possible PIP discussion. Landscaping was discussed a lot by the applicant, includes the kitchen garden beds, the rainwater elements, as well as the infiltration basins. Plans were shared with city staff, and the fire chief's comment from August 2022 was shared. I know the applicant has been in contact with them, and no other additional comments were shared. With that, the city staff recommendation is recommendation to the Monona City Council for approval, with 3 findings of fact and 5 conditions of approval as listed in the staff report. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. I think given that the extensive landscape presentation that we were just given, I'm going to start with Rob.
All right. Well, this is for the GDP, right?
Yes.
Okay. So all along, I've been excited about this project. I think it's been a good project, partially because you've been very responsive to the Commission's comments over your various appearances here. I think it's a good use of space. I think it's an attractive development. I think it's well laid out. And then as far as landscape, I don't know how deep I want to go into that now. I feel like that's more of a PIP. I think it's well landscaped. I have some concerns over the ambitions of the landscape and maintenance concerns and some of the kind of appearances, I think. But I will save that because that's coming up later on the agenda, right? But those are my general comments right now. There's a lot of material to go through here, so bear with me. I appreciate achieving the site certification. I think that going forward without the parking in the northeast or west corner is my preferred option, given the extent you're going to try to alleviate need for parking. And I feel like I've seen this a lot, so I feel like I've covered a lot of the other comments in previous, and I'll jump in later if I think of something else.
Okay, all right. Chris Sue?
Let me just start by saying I thought we talked about how small the print was last time, but there's like 4-inch margins around so many of these things that I can't. It's a tremendous waste of paper, a ton of white space, and I can barely read it. That's why I brought these readers with me. But I do want to talk a little bit about the landscaping. I agree that it seems slightly ambitious in the sense that, well, for example, is there a dedicated pet relief area on the property? Because you have edible gardens, and is the entire property fair game for a dog to go to the bathroom on the edible garden? How are you going to keep children and animals, pets, and just animals that roam at night, raccoons, rabbits, squirrels, from eating all that stuff and destroying it?
For the tenant, are you talking about specific to like tenants, dogs, and?
The tenants' dogs, for sure.
Yeah, for them, we do have DNA tracking. Our property management team has a DNA tracking system, so if they leave their crap around the premises, they'll have to pick it up, and if they don't, they'll get fined by property management.
That's impressive and fascinating.
And so we'll have that in place. As far as raccoons or rabbits, I don't know, it's probably like your backyard. There might be raccoon poop every once in a while.
Well, I don't have an edible garden in my yard. Okay, so dogs aren't allowed to go to the bathroom on the property, so that means...
No, they are, but the owner has to pick up their remains.
Okay. And so some people will want to walk their dog through the neighborhood. I guess I'm a little bit concerned that everyone's going to walk up and down Dean. There's going to be tons of dog walkers. I guess we'll see. I think that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Okay. Corey?
I share the same comments as Rob in terms of how I like the project a lot and how you've worked to design something that I think is really interesting and creative. I have a couple of questions, and I think they're GDP, they're PIP, and I should wait. Just let me know. But I also agree that the parking reduction is warranted given the options that you provide, the zip car. But I was wondering about there's a zip car and the electric, the EV share, and the scooters. Are you phasing those in, just starting with one zip car and then phasing in the other options, or is it all happening at once? What's your thought?
Yeah, we'll have one zip car to start, and then depending on demand, we'll phase them in. The EV scooters and bikes, we'll have those right away.
Okay.
We'll probably only have like 5 or 6 on site right away, and then we'll phase in more as needed as demand kind of shows. Same thing with the cars. So all of them will be there, but they'll be less right away, and then as we see the demand grow, we'll grow the
So all three options will be available when the building opens, but there might just be one Tesla, one zip car, 2 bikes, or something like that.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then I definitely think you're only missing 8 stalls, and if you have those other options, I think that makes sense. Did the bank ask for the extra lane, the extra drive lane?
Yeah, we didn't have an ATM pull-up lane, which they have there right now, and they wanted 2 drive-through lanes, and we thought we could have the ATM in a drive-through lane, and they said absolutely not.
Okay.
And so that's why we added the third one back in. It's not an actual drive-through; it's an ATM, kind of like pickup.
Okay.
You go and
Okay.
it's an ATM machine.
I like how I think you reposition the cafe, and you would reposition that from a different.
Yeah, we just flipped
Right.
it. It was on the BMO side.
Yeah.
And then we flipped it over. Yep.
I like that a lot. I think that makes a lot more sense the way you have it. The one question I have on the north side by the garden, you have a roof over the zip car, and you say that that's like a garden prep area and a fitness area, but I didn't see a lot of details about what that actually is. That just like a roof? What is that?
Yeah, we had this really cool idea with glulam columns and beams, and we priced it out, and it's extremely expensive. So I think we're actually probably going to be getting rid of that. I mean, we'll discuss it more in PIP when we come back, but we're likely going to just be removing that altogether. So, and maybe, Rob, that might be somewhere where we could add like a small dog area with like a dog park that's gated and everything. So that is something that we can look at.
Okay. Yeah, I think that would be good information to know. If there was going to be another structure, I think that would be a GDP, right? Wouldn't it? So if there's going to be a structure there, we would need that.
Yeah, it wouldn't be a structure. It'd just be like a dog, like area with fencing.
Oh, but the roof, I was wondering.
Oh yeah. We're not
okay.
having the roof yet.
Okay.
That's not there anymore.
I like the exterior materials. We've talked about that. I am As far as the landscaping, and so this is where I'm not sure if I should wait, but the sunken nature of it, how sunken is sunken? Because if someone's walking and they just slip off the curb, is that?
Pretty much close to grade, you know, pretty, like some really pretty much at grade. So the concrete pavers or the wood decking would be pretty flush, and then the rain garden would slope down from there.
Okay. Go ahead.
There won't be like any 2-foot gaps though on premise where people would have
Okay.
potential for fall. That'd be a big liability for us.
I like the concepts a lot, and I don't know enough about the mixes that you had talked about, so I wasn't really sure if there would be some flowers. But looking at the schematics, it was, I'll be interested to hear what Rob has to say. So,
Yeah.
just to have some color or something where it doesn't just look like, I don't know. It's such a beautiful site. I would want the landscaping to be something comparable. And then as far as the garden, is that for whoever wants to just go pick stuff, or is it the residents will have the ability to plant their own garden? I guess I'm not clear on what that is and the maintenance associated with that.
Yeah.
And who would take care of that?
That will be done by property management, and the residents will have their ability to go out and plant their own beds, and then that will be their gardens, and there'll be signs associated with whoever has it.
Okay. So like a community garden concept where they can plant tomatoes or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Okay. I think that is all I have for now.
Okay. Right. Chris?
Thanks. So we're struggling a little bit because this is GDP approval right now and PIP comes later, right? And so a lot of the comments cross back and forth a little bit. And I'm going to be a little bolder than Rob. I'm going to just address what I have on my piece of paper. But GDP really, if we're looking at tonight, what we would be approving would be the general layout, massing, the number of units, how you're getting access, things like that, which would be pertain to this. Some of the things I mentioned will go back and forth a little bit. The first thing is I have to agree with Chris. The plans are for PIP, what we have later are, we can't read them. There's no dimensioning on them. There's really nothing to be able to review for a PIP. And when you take half-scale plans and then take them down even further, there's no way to see them and know anything about it. So I would suggest for your future submittals for PIP to have a lot more detail and make them readable.
We do have bigger plans right over here if anyone wants
Yeah, but
to.
we get this over the weekend, and we have to study it and figure it out by the time we come here. It's not come here and quick look at them and make a comment.
Yeah.
So.
And we did offer to print out bigger plans.
I'm sorry?
We did offer to print out bigger plans, but we were told 11 by 17.
Well, these aren't even 11 by 17. It's 8.5 by 11 on a 11 by 17.
Right, exactly.
And this is a big site. If 11 by 17 isn't big enough to read, then we need to go with the 24 by 36. For a large project, we've done that many times, but we have to be able, when we're going through the stuff where we have to be able to see it, read it, to make reasonable comments on it.
That was me, so I'll certainly take that. Yeah.
Number one concern is the 5-foot setback on Gordon's. Know that we had a 14-foot setback all around this property before. In fact, your current plans in our packet, some of them still show that. There's no page numbers, but on the massing strategy, it shows a 14-foot setback from the townhomes to the property line. So when did that occur that you want to be 5 foot off that? Because I don't remember talking about that, having a 5-foot setback there.
What page do you see that on?
Well, it doesn't have a page number.
It goes back to
right here.
Planning Commission meeting maybe 2 meetings ago, or maybe 3 meetings ago, that we had the ability to go within 5 feet. So we call it the 14 feet, but with the ability to go up to 5 feet. We had discussed that in a previous meeting.
Does anybody here remember that?
Because of the nature of the size of the
Townhomes
building.
within 5 foot of the property line on the front yard?
I couldn't say either way, personally.
I don't,
I don't recall
I don't remember that, and I think the drawing, since we don't have page numbers, I think the drawing that you referenced earlier, you showed the orange and you said it was 14 all the way around.
Well, plus the one that shows the massing with the townhome shows
Right,
14 foot
right.
to the townhome. So,
Right.
5 foot is really close to Gordon Avenue. I can't imagine.
But I think that is the minimum setback along Gordon is 5 foot,
What? According to whom?
according to the setback requirements.
According to what?
The setback requirements.
No, that wouldn't
No.
be the case.
Doug?
Yes, I remember speaking with the planning commission. It was maybe our second meeting or third meeting, and it was unanimously agreed upon that we could push closer with the townhomes, that it wasn't necessary to push back the full 14 feet with the townhomes, that they could push closer to Gordon, given that it's 5 feet from the property line, so now 5 feet from the street itself. And that the rest of the building, and given the nature of the height of the buildings and that they're a pitched roof, that we could push closer to the site, to the property line.
I mean, we can pull up the minutes as well if we need to.
I don't remember that conversation at all,
I
so.
think
Maybe
Yeah, we can look back and find as well.
maybe some of this is owing to the, there is a pretty extensive right-of-way along Gordon, so maybe there's some, as I understand it, would be 5 to the property line, but there would be another 10 plus probably to the curb.
Yeah.
Exactly, more like 15 from the curb, or close-ish to 15 from the curb itself.
That's really close to the street. It's a lot different than that residential neighborhood. Now, I can imagine where we talked about letting those stairways get closer, but
Right.
having the buildings back at that 14 feet, I think that's a rather major change from
Yeah, in
what I
fact,
anticipated.
I think it was, if I remember, it might have been the stairways, but not the building itself.
Correct.
Right.
So
Okay.
that would be a number one for me. In no particular order, on sheet A104, what is that shaded, that's the basement plan, the shaded darker square that's not contiguous with the underground parking?
That's the cistern.
I'm sorry?
That's the cistern, the cistern.
Oh, underground for water?
Yep. For
Okay.
stormwater management.
Okay. What's the front door to the bank from the parking lot? How do they get there? How do those customers get there?
From where?
The vestibule in the rear,
From the
there's a primary access on the west side of the building, which you'll see in that lobby, that main lobby, on the south building.
I can't read the writing, but isn't that north piece, is that the bank also? Is that entire building the bank?
The bank is solely the southeast
what I thought.
portion of the building.
That's what I thought. So how do you get in the bank when you come to visit the bank?
The back.
You go from the parking, either that handicap parking or a few stalls to the north, and then some parking to the west, and walk across that crosswalk north on that crosswalk, and then those two doors that open outward, exactly. Then you go south from there and straight into the bank. Correct. Exactly.
So
I have it on the screen, Chris. If that's helpful.
Yeah.
So you walk through the drive-through?
No.
No, you take this crosswalk both east and then north, and come to the paving, to the sidewalk, and then you take the sidewalk into the bank.
And this is the raised pedestrian.
Understand it, but I can't see his cursor. It's just, there's 3 separate buildings there on the first floor, right? Or 3 separate tenants?
Correct.
Okay, so the bank is just at south.
Correct.
I don't see the door to get in there.
If you wanted to, oh, it's right there.
Okay, so that's a lobby?
The entrance door is up here.
Okay.
And they come in through here.
Okay.
And then is that one in the corner, the southeast
Southeast.
corner, is that also an entrance to the back?
Yeah.
On the
bottom.
on the
Yeah.
very end.
This is different.
Correct, exactly.
Okay.
I mean, these aren't final, right? Because we're designing core and shell right now, but yes, these are the potential entrances.
With the drive-through, that's about the only way you have to go is over, up, over, back, down. Yes. So what I'm seeing is, it looks like you have the concrete. Is the concrete the shaded gray, or is the white the concrete?
The white is the concrete.
So then, okay, so then where that crosswalk hits next to the handicap, how do they get over to the other white? Because that's shaded, so that's landscaping?
That would all be pavers, correct. It's either concrete pavers or wooden, where you see the kind of wood grain.
So that shaded part is concrete, or that shaded part is walkable?
Exactly.
Okay. All right. We addressed the zip car shelter, but that would be a condition of approval tonight, since it's on your plans that we're not approving a structure there, because that would be a whole other thing to look at. If you do want to come back and propose it, but we'd certainly have to see it, and it's awful close to the property lines. It's certainly not within that 14-foot setback, and we've never seen it.
And Chris, I do want to point out something. I just am looking at the Plan Commission meeting minutes in your guys' packet from the 8/22 meeting, and we have not changed that slide. And so that 5-foot setback was the same, and you did not address it in the last meeting.
Well, I noticed it tonight.
Well, I wasn't addressed in the last meeting.
Maybe you didn't bring it up, maybe I didn't notice it, but we've never discussed going to a 5-foot setback for those buildings.
No, we did discuss it. We presented it in the last meeting.
We could show plans of a commission meeting where we had it actually at 14 feet, and then it was discussed that it could be brought forward. And so we did bring it forward. We originally had them at 14 feet, and then we pushed them outward to accommodate for parking. And so that was discussed within a meeting.
I disagree with that recollection, and I don't believe we would allow buildings to be built 5 foot from a property line. So, and tonight's the approval, not the pre-hearing conference before. Unless some other commissioner here can tell me different.
I think the answers did, well.
I'm sorry?
They're recorded.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, he's right that they were presented as such. Whether we brought it up to comment on is a different question.
It's also presented tonight at 14 feet. In a couple different documents. So apparently there's not any consistency on it. I think, to address, Christie's comments, she came tonight to speak about this. I feel like the traffic will be better on Gordon. I probably frequented Nick's once or twice, or maybe more than that. And then, at 11, 12 o'clock at night, there is a steady stream of cars coming back into your neighborhood and headlights and everything. And this has got to be a far superior situation to that. I know it'd be nice to keep it low density, but as you know from serving here, this is a prime corner. I think when they redid their project to keep it strictly on Gordon and strictly on Dean, that takes a lot of traffic off of your street. And I don't know what else we would have them do. We can't put them on a Monona Drive, as you know, it's too close to the stoplight. So I think they've addressed traffic pretty well. I know the traffic study didn't take into account the kids' cars, but it wasn't close to a failing situation on any of those intersections either. When you go through the traffic study, it was fairly good level of service on all of them, including their anticipation of what this would bring. And my experience with apartments is they don't bring that many trips. There aren't cars screaming there. The commercial, the commercial uses, hopefully it will. And that's where we disagree with the applicant on the parking ratios. But I do believe the commission has addressed the parking fairly well. I think getting all those driveways, the banks, Nicks, everybody off of Gordon will really help your neighborhood compared to the use that was there. So I don't know what else to say about that, but I think we're trying to do the best we can for the neighborhood there.
I do agree with that. I think my concerns are more on Spring Haven, where the laundry traffic is backing out consistently.
Sorry.
That's fine.
So, Christine, I just was going to say, if you want to speak, you've got to
Right.
go to it.
In Spring Haven, excuse me, Spring Haven probably has more traffic now with the antique mall and everything and people coming and going than it will when somebody that lives in the apartment parks there. I don't anticipate a lot of people from the commercial area parking over there. To me, that's maybe people from the apartments that have a second car or have visitors or something. They'll get to learn that area, and probably, I don't have a crystal ball, but probably it'll be less, if not equal, it'll be probably less traffic than from coming and going to see the mall or the skate shop or whatever else they were doing in the past. So that's my hope, that's my thought. Question on your, excuse me, your building on the southeast corner. Your parking ramp is square, and then you cut the corner for the BMO entrance, right?
Yeah.
But now on the parking lot where it's square there, you're really close to those masonry walls. Are you thinking you could have room there for earth retention to be able to get that garage in? It's really tight.
I think we do. Dylan, you want to answer that?
You typically need 5 feet or more to try to get the earth retention in and still have room to form those walls.
I think we'll have room to do it.
It's something to keep in mind because obviously there's an easement. The city wants to keep those masonry walls, and I'm sure you don't want to lose them and have to rebuild them.
Right.
Okay, it's just a thought. That's what I see as the big pinch point that you have.
I do have a request that I need to ask from BMO. Would it be possible for us to rebuild those masonry walls?
But I think that'll have to go through more than us, but certainly, for a project like this, it's not unreasonable to take out some infrastructure and replace it in kind when you're done. I would think it would probably be a question of Public Works, but we certainly, it's not unusual, and I do see that as a pinch point for you.
Yeah.
They're more concerned that it doesn't adhere to their branding and would like to have it be white brick.
I'm sorry?
They're more concerned that the stone wall doesn't adhere with their branding and would like to have it be BMO white brick.
It would be rebuilt with the stone.
It would have to be
Oh,
rebuilt.
yeah. That's, if you look up and down Monona Drive from the south end all the way to the north end, every single wall is the identical stone, the identical look. So yeah, it would have to be rebuilt to the standard it's at right now, the masonry that's on it.
And there's no variance we'd get to that?
I'm sorry?
There wouldn't be any variance we'd get?
No.
It wouldn't adhere to Monona's branding.
That's Monona's branding.
I will take that back to them.
Yeah.
I'm glad that's in the minutes.
Yeah.
Question on the landscaping. Did I get that right, that plaza area between the two buildings will have infiltration?
Yes.
And are you worried about your structure down below when you're infiltrating on top of it?
No.
No, the plan was it will infiltrate.
Sorry, if we could have you go up to the mic, you're going to speak it. We have to, or
You want to address this?
yeah. Thank you.
So some of that area to the west of the building will have some infiltration. There will be some grass planted that is above the parking garage, but that will be protected by a waterproofing membrane. But otherwise, our bioinfiltration basins will not be in that area. It'll just be natural infiltration.
Because I thought I heard the presentation say that there'd be some infiltration between the two buildings. And that's not
No, that it will not be the bioinfiltration basins that we're typical seeing.
Great, because you don't really have enough depth to do it before you get to the top of your parking garage. Okay. briefly, parking, I agree with what's been presented, the 172, and some of your other efforts. I would take great issue with the parking analysis you gave us tonight. I think it came up at 121. If you take out the 88 underground stalls, that analysis will say you only need 33 above ground stalls, and just the commercial area alone needs more than that, much less visitors to the apartments and people that have a second car. So I think we've met a good compromise. I would absolutely not ask you to put in that northwest parking lot right away. The only thing that's there for is a placeholder for Plan B. I think we mentioned that before, that if this thing really does great and everybody's got extra cars and the commercial really soars and there's a parking problem, we don't want that to translate into the neighborhood. At which point the Plan Commission would get a hold of you, say you need to come back, we need to exercise this condition of approval, at which point the neighborhood would come and say, no, we don't care if our neighborhood's overparked, we want to keep that green space, or they might have it say, yeah, we got to get more parking here because it's impacting the rest of the neighborhood. So that would be the point of it. It's an option here. We would include it as an option. It's in one of Doug's recommended conditions, but it's not the intent to try to have you do something like that right away. None of us want that. All of us would rather see the green space and all the things you propose. It's well thought out. It's a what if, as the chair said before, it's a Plan B.
Yeah, okay.
Could I ask what type of permeable you're proposing?
It's an exercise tonight, isn't it, Dylan?
It's specifically called paved drain.
Okay, I know it.
Okay.
Could you explain for the rest of us?
It's a paving block. It's a type.
It's a permeable paving block. It's got a pretty high infiltration rate. It also detains the water within the clearstone below it, so it acts.
Okay, so there's chips between.
Yeah, unlike typical paving blocks, this stuff is built almost in a map. And it's blocks that have a little capacity underneath them, but then they also, to meet the technical standard for infiltration, they have to have the layer underneath that filters it, and then they fill it with chips. But so the filtering area is still in it, they just accomplish it a different way. They don't filter it right immediately, they have to put the chips underneath because it's a little bit different product.
Okay. Thank you.
But they work through the technical standard that it's acceptable. Okay, I don't know who's got to go up there now. What type of green roof are you proposing?
We haven't decided yet.
So, full membrane, container?
Yeah, we're not sure. It's likely going to, we're looking at the structural analysis right now, but we haven't decided yet because we haven't gotten that back.
Okay. It'll be a PIP item, but there's a lot of things you need to look at on that. The full membranes certainly perform better as far as the green roof part goes. It could be intensive, extensive. A couple things to look at is to make sure you have water available in that area. Some of them will require irrigation, some you may not need it, but you'll need it for sure to get the green roof started. When you're looking at your design, look at have some ability to get rid of all the dead plants because you'll have a lot of that, and most places find it kind of difficult to be taking wheelbarrows full of that down your tenant's elevator. Some places will put in a chute, or just think about where that's going to be. Think about the people who are going to be up there maintaining it. They'll need somewhere to store tools unless they haul them up and down that elevator every week, certainly in the beginning while you're establishing it. And then think about tie-offs if there's just an open edge there or something, so people are maintaining up there have a way to tie off so it's safe. I mean, there's just a lot of things you'll want to get into your architectural when you start going through with that green roof.
Yeah, we just went through it on another project.
Okay.
And we went with extensive, and we're doing temporary watering because that's a lead project.
Okay.
So it has to be pulled out after 2 years once the plans are established.
Yep.
And then we do have a tie-off on top, and we have a little shed for
Great.
tools. So
Perfect.
Hopefully we'll be able to do something like that.
You're
but we
very
might have-
experienced on green roofs, and that's great.
We like green roofs a lot, yeah.
And still make sure you have your hose bib at the end, because there will be droughts and things where you do have to put a little water on it with a hose and sprayer.
Yeah, we're actually going to leave the temporary in just in case.
Okay.
Don't
Right.
tell the lead guys that, though.
Okay, thanks.
I keep this on record, so they'll find out.
The elevation showing the BMO corner, would be nice to be able to see that when you come back with your PIP. You're looking at a different material, and I understand it's a different color.
Yeah, we actually have PIP presentation after this that we
Understood.
haven't shared.
But
Yeah.
it wasn't clear to me when I went through it.
It will be the BMO
Okay.
blue, which
Great.
is just a wonderful color. We love that color.
I know landscaping is PIP, but in general, in Minot, we count all stalls underground and above ground towards the landscaping points required. Obviously, we have buildings here that have nothing but underground stalls, and they still need landscaping. And so that'll be there, and typically when we have a high visibility corner like this, our landscape points are minimums. And typically we look at a high visibility corner and say you need to be better than minimum when you're on such a high visibility corner. Question for fire. What's the clearance under your buildings on the access drive?
Sean, do you know that?
I think it's 13. I think it's more than 13.6.
Okay, I think this is something to make sure you confirm so that our ladder truck can get through there.
We've been speaking with.
Yep. It's just something, we haven't seen anything with that height, and that would be something that'd be important for full access through there. Not to mention the inexperienced drivers that come with moving vans and stuff and don't know how to read a sign, drive under there anyhow.
Yeah.
Okay. What's that? I think that's good. If I missed anything, I'll hit you back on the PIP.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
Brian?
My eyes hurt, so. That's just me. And I had to take them off to read the big print, so don't worry. I will jump in and go through kind of just the main sections and time in there. I have no questions regarding zoning and land use. I think this is a great project for the site. I would agree with some of the previous comments that I think you've taken a lot of the feedback from this group, have done a tremendous job of incorporating much of that, and even some of the points of maybe disagreement, I think have been eager to try to come up with some solutions that meet some of the concerns that this body has shared. So I appreciate that overall, and I think it's making a better project in the long run. Lot coverage, this was a piece that I think we initially had a lot of concerns regarding. I think we're still being able to hit close to, if not right at, our target of 30% or just slightly above or below. So that's to be applauded given the density with the site and the parking restraints. Like all those pieces together, I think we balanced that quite well, and we're meeting that. The setbacks discussion, I keep looking through these packets. I don't recall the exact numbers, but then again, my brain's full of lots of information. I would say that when I look at some of the plans, although there may be some indications of 14 on the north, east, and south property line, or 5 in the west, when I look at the shading and different things, it may not have been the part that jumped out at me, or the shading showing the 14-foot was much more of the representation, so I may have missed it on some previous ones. I do recall, and I don't know if this was a specific discussion, but regarding the third lane at the bank. Initially, I was like, oh, great, that third lane's back, but now it makes perfect sense when you share kind of the feedback of they really just don't want one lane for bank traffic. They need an ATM lane, and they really need 2 lanes in case someone's kind of holding up the lane. You got to have a second option. And I'm wondering if that third lane with the entry and exit in addition to those 3 lanes is also some of our challenge with the depth now of the site going from east to west. That getting 5 lanes in there plus the building as proposed is causing some of that pinch. Because if I look at where the townhomes are, to bring them back further off of Gordon, I'm not sure how much that compromises the other pieces when it comes to the drive aisles and the width of those drive aisles and how much of an impact. And I think some of this we might just need to like look at the bigger copy to figure out like, is there room to push those buildings back without compromising those drive aisles? So it's just a question.
It's not the drive aisles that we're concerned about, it's the parking stalls behind the townhomes. So if we want to further add another problem to the already kind of issue, which I think we've solved, which is parking, we would be adding to it, because if we move those townhomes back, there's parking stalls in front of the townhomes right now. And so the goal would be that it's a 3-bedroom townhome. They're likely going to have 2 cars. One car is going to park in the garage, the other is going to park in front of the garage. So if we move it back 5 feet, there's likely not enough room for another car. So yes, we could do that, but now where does the other car go?
Yeah, and I would agree that the parking in the driveway in front of their own garage makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
And I agree, if you push that and you keep that vehicle there, you've got the compromise with the drive aisles.
Well, I don't think there'd be enough room for the drive aisles and a vehicle.
And that's the part that it's tough to confirm that here, and I might want to look at the bigger copies.
You want to bring it over to you?
Not yet. I'll keep going, and then we'll take a look. I think how those townhomes relate to Gordon Avenue is important to me, in the sense of the way this project progressed over time. I think this is an advantage of being able to scale down as you get closer to the single-family homes on Gordon. I think that was one of the big pieces of feedback this group had. Softening the edges on the 2 corners to be able to try to help kind of blend into that neighborhood rather than having a 4-story massing on that edge. 4-story massing on that edge, 14 feet off, to me is worse than pushing closer to Gordon with a townhome pitched roof. And I think some of it, I just have to also look in that other plan of how much of that is the building versus stairway. And if I look at some of the other buildings where up and down the drive in Monona and outside of Monona, the proximity of the building versus the proximity of that stairwell or entryway. And when I saw the hedge fence, I think is what it was referenced as, in the gate, like how those items relate to that street edge, to me is pretty important. Because it's not just looking at the building that's pushed up close to me, it relates to all of those components. So I want to look at a little bit more of that as it relates to the 5 feet issue.
Understood.
Circulation, it all makes sense to me now. I agree with the other comments regarding I'd rather have the garden than no garden. I think that Chris number 2's comments regarding who gets to eat the vegetables that are grown, my guess is it's probably raised gardens that are less prone to issues, and I think that's the life of anybody that's growing some items, and they might come up with other creative solutions on how do you create that space that is somewhat more protective, at the same time meets the needs of the residents.
And not chicken wire.
And my guess is, given the rest of the things that are on this property, I have a high feeling it probably wouldn't be chicken wire. It could be, but I doubt it, is my guess. Traffic analysis, I think Chris addressed some of this, and to public comment, I think I agree. When this project shifted to entry on Spring Haven and exit on Dean, and that discussion that we had about how do we keep traffic off of Gordon, this was really the strongest way to be able to do that. And there was a high recognition that anybody on the north side of this property likely is going to be a heavy entrance way, but not an exit. People are not going to exit there to go to Spring Haven to try to take a left into traffic when they can get a controlled line.
Yeah.
So we think the vast majority are just going to go out that other way. I think what we experience now is if you come into Spring Haven for anything, Or if you're in the strip mall of the laundromat, you don't try to exit Spring Haven, so you end up going back to Gordon and going both ways for anything back there, because you don't want to turn around and try to exit there because of all the problems you talked about. It's tough to turn left, and if you turn right, you're running into a lot of traffic. So I think this will help. I think it gives the best flow of traffic for the area. Architecture and massing, we talked quite a bit about. I have no other concerns. Landscaping, I would say there's people with much more expertise than me when it comes to selection of those items, but I would say, based on the renderings and some of the description of it, to me, this is a pretty attractive kind of conceptual landscaping approach. I think it's not maybe heavy on what we come as points, and I know that this has been something that we've discussed here before regarding how do we address some of the items that are not point-driven in our current ordinance when it is an aggressively landscaped site, and how to capture those pieces. The green roofs don't count because the greenery at the pedestrian and the public level, I think, is the key piece of why it's related to parking stalls. And I think the green roofs are the bonus.
Although I think we also discussed that maybe moving forward, we should include green roads. It's not, when we're considering, we did have a discussion as to whether that was.
I think we have the discussion regarding the amount of green space on a property and the value of the green space, both green space and landscaping points. Landscaping points were connected directly to the parking stalls, and so, for example, and I'll paint the far bookend, right? Like, if we put a huge parking lot in and then put all of our greenery up on the roof, that doesn't benefit anything. But I think it was trying to balance that recognition of infrastructure, even up above, is helpful infrastructure. And if I remember right, the 2 hydrants that are being requested would be private hydrants?
Yes, that is right.
That is all I have.
Okay. Well, a lot of what I would say has already been said. I'm not going to repeat everything. I do want to say that I've always thought this was a solid project, and I appreciate how well the whole thing has been thought out, how responsive you've been. It has just consistently improved throughout. I really like the use of brick, changing at every level. I always liked the design from the beginning, but I think it's gotten better as you've clarified the type of brick. That certainly helps with the massing, even from Monona Drive. The stepping helps from Gordon. I do have a vague recollection of talking about the setback on Gordon being close. I don't remember 5 feet, but I guess I'm kind of inclined to agree with the comments Brian just made, that the setback really affects the townhouse part, and then you've got green space on the other ends, and there's parking, I guess, on one. But when I was looking at the slides with the hedge, I thought, too, there's a lot of greenery right there, and given the need to have the cars behind the townhouses, I don't necessarily see a solution to that either. So I'd like to look at that. I mean, I think we probably need to look at it again, but I might be okay with it based on that. I just think that you have been so responsive with the design of the townhouses facing Gordon, the greenery that's there, the other green space, and hopefully we won't have to do anything with that northwest corner other than the beautiful plans you've laid out. I think all of that mitigates the fact that there may be less setback there. For me, I just don't think that would be a hill I'd die on, because I think this is really a solid project, and I also agree, and this is probably more of a PDP thing, the landscaping with the espaliers and the edible gardens seems, the word ambitious was used. In my head I was thinking overly ambitious. And I guess I'm partly wondering with an edible garden like that, what if you have a tenant like me who doesn't want to have, I'd love to get fresh vegetables, but no interest in growing them myself. If you have a lot of people who don't want those, I assume the management would plant something in those other, if you have it divided up into boxes, however you're describing it, that you'd think through how there'd be something attractive growing there.
Yeah.
in the event that not everybody wants to do edible gardens.
We have another project where we have 64 beds,
Okay.
and so we probably won't have all 64 used. So when they're not used, property management will be gardening those.
Okay, yeah, so just so there's a plan for that, and Espalia is really a cool idea. That also seems, that would be something management would.
Yeah, that would
deal
be our
with this,
that would be our
And
landscaper.
I thought right away about, I just talked to somebody at a startup where they're growing all kinds of vegetables vertically as well for, urban gardening. Yeah, what kinds of things you could do there is, that's yeah, there are so many attractive things here, and again, going back to the landscaping points, if we don't have a calculation for points for all that kind of stuff, I think we all need to think about that as part of it, because, I think you've done a lot with that. One mention was, at one point, there was some talk about bike storage inside, and I don't see any of that here, and I don't know if you've done any thinking about that, if there could be wall-mounted bike racks
Yeah,
by some of the...
in front of every stall downstairs.
Okay,
we'll
there
have
will
a
be,
wall
okay.
mounted,
So
yeah,
that will
they'll
still
just
be there.
in front of their car.
Okay, I think otherwise, I think so much has been said, I don't quite see any reason to repeat everything. I'm very comfortable with the parking the way it is, and I think, we'll just see how that goes. I think it looks good, so nothing else to add.
Thank you.
I just have a couple of questions and a comment. One is, it was referenced, I believe, in Doug's report that there was some discussion or some question mark as to whether you might have the townhomes for sale as opposed to for rent. Is that under consideration?
Yeah, it's no longer under consideration. We went into an agreement where our architects won't allow it.
Okay. Because honestly, I have to say, I know this is a topic that this committee's talked about a lot, in terms of rent versus purchase, and I have to say, given the quality of this development, I could see people, certainly the townhome, certainly being interested in purchasing it. It just doesn't seem, it seems like it would be, given all the amenities that you're offering, it would be a place that people would want to be a part of it. So that's disappointing to hear.
It might be, but there would have to be some legal agreements between our architect and us that probably won't be favorable for us. So
Okay.
Yeah, it might be something in like 5 or 10 years we consider. If we sold the 2 buildings up front by themselves and then kept the back one, we might subdivide it into townhomes that we could sell, but right now we're going to do for rent.
Okay. And then when you said that the PMO drive-through, and they're adding the additional aid for the ATM, you said that because that was completely a no-go for them corporately?
Yeah, correct.
So they don't do that in any other bank?
No. What they do is they'll have a separate drive-up station, which we looked at, but there wasn't really any spot on the site where we could add that.
Right.
And if we did add it, we'd be getting rid of a lot of stalls.
Right. Because I certainly know quite a few banks that don't have the ATM separately. And the drive-through for the, and the tube and the ATM are all right there. And so I'm just kind of surprised. And I like frankly, I like the idea of not having so many lanes. I don't know.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
The UW Credit Union in Monona they have an ATM that's set forward of the teller tube thing,
Right.
so that someone can pull ahead and use the ATM, and while that person's using the ATM, someone else can be doing a transaction with that teller
Right.
at the same time. So
Right.
it's kind of a twofer.
Exactly. That was one of the ones I was thinking of too, since I also...
Yeah, this was one of their corporate requirements that we can't get around.
Okay.
And we can't do the site without BMO, or the development without BMO. So.
Okay. And I just wanted to address Christy Goforth's concern around affordability, and as a community, which is to say that I think this Planning Commission, this community, is definitely aware of the need for affordable housing in Monona. and we're supportive of looking at, as obviously we've approved another development previously, two other developments previously actually that had affordable housing as components to them, but and so I don't think that we're any less committed to affordable housing and continuing to look at projects along that, our commitment to that. That said, I don't know that, you were very clear in the very beginning that you made a choice. You were making a choice. Looking at 2 or 3 things, including sustainability as opposed to affordability in this site, and I, we've had that under discussion now for months. So I just wanted to again say that Monona is committed to affordable housing. But that doesn't mean that every single development that comes here is going to be addressing that need. And I, appreciate everything else, as all the other commission members have said. I appreciate the creativity, commitment to sustainability, and all of the work that you've done on the project today. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Could I ask, what is the proposed setback for those townhomes? Because I can't tell. It's certainly more than 5 feet, but it doesn't look like 14 feet.
Doug, do you have the exact dimension that you could share?
One second, I can measure. I think it's around 7. I mean, yes, it's 7. I mean, it varies across the site because the setback line is not, the property line is not parallel to the townhomes. So it's around 7.
It looks like more than that on the plans we have. I don't see a property line. I see it. Does it skew a little bit to the north?
The big sheets, your triangle square.
Sorry, the setback line is yes, you're right. You're actually right. The setback line, I'm measuring it now in CAD. It's around 12. It's around 12.
Yeah, it looks more like that.
It's like 12, and then the rest is more than 14. We have a minimum of 14. You can see at the BMO corner. And then we push back everywhere else more around 20, some places 20. This says 23 in the northeast corner.
That's good.
So yeah, everywhere is setting back more than 14, pretty much.
Measured parking should be 60 feet. It's not reasonable scale. It's almost a half scale. It's almost 25. So you're getting 12 feet from the sidewalk, or 12 feet from the property line?
From the property.
Okay, so if we're 12 foot from the property, and I think we'd all agree that's acceptable. But,
around 20 from the.
But we can't approve a GDP 5 foot from the property line. So I think.
No, you're correct. It's that secondary line is actually showing the 14 foot. Exactly, it's showing a 14 foot setback and then a 5 foot at the back. But the 5 foot is for the porches, and the porches are another 5 feet or 7 feet. So it's really more like 12.
I believe that's correct, and that's what's really important on how it relates to the people across the road. How far away that 3-story structure is from the road. So I would suggest we could craft that to mention that the building proper is a 12-foot setback, and steps, stoops, whatever comes in there, that would.
Yes, we can draw it as such. Not a problem.
Okay. Then I had 2 other quick, one question, one comment. JT Engineering, make sure you double check that drive-through. It's a lot better than it was, but make sure a pickup can get through there and make that turn. I can scale this one. almost, except it's not scalable.
Chris, if you see this rendering, that's a little bit better street scale. But just so we have it clear, there's the street terrace, right, which is really big. There's nice trees on there right now. Then we have the sidewalk, and then we have our setback.
Correct.
So if you're driving down Gordon, it's going to look like houses. That's the goal.
That's like, well, actually, in Monona, our setback's 25 for houses.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
30 for single.
Well, these are
I'm sorry?
30.
Oh, that's right, it's 30. That's Madison. Yeah, we're 30 foot. So you're a little less. You're less than half of it. So this is close, although I'm not sure that those homes across the street are 30 foot back. Some of those are pretty close.
I can check.
It's all right. I just think we need to be aware of what we're approving tonight, and the GDP certainly approves setbacks. So what we're looking at then is to the building proper would be a setback of 12 foot versus 14.
So what you're saying, if you go back to that, what we've just measured is that from the edge of the sidewalk?
No, from the property line. So property line's probably a foot behind the sidewalk.
Yeah, our property line's about here.
If you go to the drawing, if you go back to the drawing, basically what we're showing is a 5 foot setback from the actual porches and not from the building proper. So it's more like another 6 or 7 feet of those 7 feet of those terraces for each townhome, which would give you 12 feet basically.
There's not a basement under those porches, is there?
No, there's no basement at all for the townhomes.
So if we talk about 12 foot to the structure, which would be the edge of the basement wall or whatever, that's what you're showing right now.
Correct, exactly.
Right? So we can be clear about that, and then we're pretty close to what we were originally thinking.
Right. Okay.
Correct.
And
The footing might be farther than that.
the footing for the porch, but not a basement.
Yeah.
Right. So
No basement at all.
absolutely, I get that. But what we're looking at is the structure, and then that those porches at only one story, they kind of help pull that structure down to the ground anyway. They help ground it. So I think that's a reasonable compromise on this issue, and we don't have to go back.
I like the
Okay. And then I have the drive-through comment and a comment for all the commissioners just for thinking about the PIP. We originally had 8 townhomes, now we have 10, and it's just 10 Ps in a row. And to me, it's a little bit boring, the architecture, when we've got 10 identical things. Boom, boom, boom. And if there'd be some way to maybe mix up the finishes or something so it looks like almost individual units like they used to in the old days. I don't know if anybody else agrees with that, but it's a lot of the exact same thing in a row.
We actually had that as one of our original designs.
Did we throw it out?
Well, it got thrown out by the design team, but that was actually one of my ideas, so I agree with you, Chris. I like
Great.
that. You hear that, dog?
What was that?
Selective hearing.
We'll look at it.
Yeah.
I think it'd be nice for the people across the road instead of just the monotony of just the same exact thing 10 times in a row.
Yeah, no, we looked at doing different materials and having more of
Right.
a European type of
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other comments, questions from the commissioners? That being the case, do I have a motion?
Yes, I'll move approval with the findings of fact as written by staff. Conditions 1 through 5 as written by staff. Condition 6, that access easement be recorded as part of this GDP. And condition 7, that the Gordon Avenue setback will be 12 foot to the building proper, with the porches allowed to encroach on that setback. And condition 8, that this does not include approval for the potential zip car shelter / pavilion.
I have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a second. Any other discussion?
Are there any questions from the applicant on this?
Any questions about the conditions or the additional conditions?
I'll just make the comment. I did the access easement on this because we're approving the access to these properties, and that one property, lot, I don't remember if it's 1 or 2, but it doesn't have any access without the access easement on this property. So this, I felt, was an appropriate place to talk about. I know you'll probably have it on CSM at some point, but we can't approve a GDP for the building without a way to access the building. I didn't talk about the drainage easement yet because you haven't proposed it, and we don't know what your final drainage facilities are, so that would be a PIP detail, but it'd be the same type of thing then on the PIP.
Okay. Anything else? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Congratulations. I'm going to move on to new business, number 6A. Public hearing on the request by Imperial Builders and Contractors LLC for approval of a new landscape ground sign at 1220 Femrite Drive, case number S018-2022. Welcome.
Hi.
Go ahead and share whatever you would like to share with us about your proposal.
So I bought that building a few years ago. It was what might be known as the thrift painting building. Thrift painting is still a tenant in it, and right now there's a single place wooden sign there that is in need of repair, and I'm proposing that a new sign be installed that's a little bigger and has space for more tenants to have access to the space on it. And by the nature of the landscaping there, to use the full 60 feet of space that's allowed for that type of building, I would need to pull the sign forward a little bit closer to the street than the normal setback. The normal setback is 15 feet from the back of the curb. And at that point, my landscaping is really pretty narrow where the sign would be likely to get hit by cars pulling up to it because of the way the parking comes to that spot. Snow plows pushing snow from those parking spots into that little bit of landscaping. So if it could slide forward about 2 feet, it gets to a wider spot in the landscaping where it's not in line with the parking stalls anymore. It can be wide enough to use the full 60 square feet because there's a 5-foot height requirement. So that means the sign needs to be at least 12 feet wide. To, 5 by 12 gets to the 60 square feet. I'd like to advertise for myself on it as the feature tenant, and then have up to 6 other spaces for other tenants in the building.
Thank you. Is there anybody else here to talk on this particular ground sign? We'll close the public hearing, go to consideration of action on the request by Imperial Builders and Contractors LLC for approval of a new landscape ground sign at 1220 Femrite Drive, case number S018-2022. Doug?
Thank you. As mentioned, Imperial Builders Real Estate LLC, the property owner, is proposing the replacement of one monument sign at the multi-tenant building, 1220 Femrite Drive, to reflect the new building ownership as well as give space for tenants. The monument sign, as proposed, would be 60 square feet, 5 feet tall, LED illuminated aluminum cabinet with polycarbonate faces that's just over 12 feet from the curb face and facing south. The property is zoned community design district, which does allow for up to 60 square feet of area, 5 feet of height, but it must be 15 feet from the street curb face. The existing monument sign is approximately 24 square feet, 5 feet tall, and located 15 feet from the curb face. But it is in that narrow section of landscaping, 8 feet 6 inches wide, between 2 rows of parking stalls, and it takes up that entire width of landscaping. The proposal is to bring the sign forward to the wider strip of landscaping to allow for that full signage, and also to eliminate the risk of snowplow damage and damage from the vehicles if it to overhang the parking stall. The proposed sign would be placed parallel to the street rather than perpendicular, The edges would still be about 14 feet, 14 feet from the edge of the driveways, still maintaining visibility for those entering and exiting Femrite Drive. The site would be multi-tenant, or the sign would be multi-tenant with panels for additional tenants that may be advertised in addition as well as the featured tenant. With that, the recommendation is approval of the sign permit with 2 findings of fact and 5 conditions of approval. Thank you.
With that, I will start. This time, Susan Fox. Would you like to start?
Sure. I think it looks fine, and I think the rationale for having it 2 feet forward makes some sense. And in that location, I don't see that as a problem as long as we spell that out. And my only concern with looking at the sign is just with the text so low, I can't tell how far off the ground that text is, but it looks like it might be hard to read, but that's for you to kind of think about, I guess. Otherwise, I like the looks of the sign. It's cleaner looking and with some new landscaping, and I saw the suggested condition that staff approval on landscaping around the sign. It looks fine to me. That's all.
Okay, great. Brian?
Yeah, I would agree. I went out to the site to kind of get a better sense of it, and at first I was like, okay, wait a minute, if it's there, what? I thought it was a replacement. When I recognized the increase in the width, yeah, you'd be eliminating 2 parking stalls if you kept that 15 feet, and I don't think that's desired in that location. When I go to other sites along Femrite that might be Monona or Madison, I think there are some others that are closer than 15 feet. They just might not be in Monona. And I think this is an appropriate kind of accommodation to make. The building next door, instead of having their sign positioned as a landscape sign, it looks like they chose to use like a tenant signage on the building itself, and I think this is appropriate kind of use of that signage. The other part that jumped out at me is the white acrylic, and it looks like it also is going to be illuminated. Is that correct?
Yep.
Others down here will have a better sense of like temperature and glare. I don't have it, but they'll tell you in just a few people. So I'll leave it there.
Thank you. Rob?
I don't have any issues with the sign. I think it makes sense to move it forward. I don't think it'll obstruct views, and my only comments would be for landscaping plan, careful plant selection, because of what Susan said, it's pretty low to the ground, or just highlight the corners as kind of bookend. And then as far as glare, I think there's already a condition of approval. If the glare is too much, then that will have to be addressed with the white acrylic plastic. Some kind can be a bit of a hot spot, but no problems with it.
Okay, great. Chris? Sue?
Yeah, I agree. This is a very appropriate and reasonable request. I would probably be making the same request myself if I owned that building. One concern I have is in looking at your mock-up and rendering, the address of the building is almost impossible to see. It's almost, there's no point in putting it on there as far as I'm concerned. I wish you would make it bigger so I could see it. I drive past this building probably 3 times a day because I go to Menards 3 times a day, it seems. And now that it gets dark at 4 o'clock, I don't want to be distracted or blinded by a bright white monolith. So I hope that you'll use a warm temperature lighting system. Other than that, that's I'm good.
Okay, Gordon?
The only comment I have is I think it's great to have some additional visibility for the other tenants in the building, so I think it's appropriate.
Thank you. Chris?
Well, first, I'd like to apologize to you for having to sit through all this. unfortunately, you weren't on the agenda first. I think I drove through there and it blocks the sidewalk a little bit by putting it there, but it doesn't really block traffic, so. The one thing that's unusual is normally we don't have, the landscape ground signs have copy on them all the way down to the ground, to leave a little room for that landscaping down there, so you might want to look at a little room there. And then the glare that everybody keeps talking about, mentioning and talking about, well, we've had a lot of experience in Monona with some people that have put in these signs and they haven't made it a little more opaque. It's just bright white. And if that's what happens, that's when we come back and say, you got to tone that down. So I would just talk to your sign manufacturer, tell them just to, they can put some film on the back of the white part, so it still lights up and you can see it just fine, but it's not that headlight right in your eyes, especially where you're at. So that's just a shout out to you, just to make sure you talk to them about that.
I'm definitely relying on the sign guys to
Pardon?
I'm definitely relying on the sign company to do what's appropriate.
Yeah,
So
yeah, but just let them know we're a little worried about being too bright, so that they can tone it down to whatever they want. They just put a little film on the back, different opacities, so that it shines, but it's not like a headlight. And that's what everybody's talking about. Other than that, I think it's fine.
With that, do I have a motion?
Move approval with
Right.
with conditions as stated by staff.
Okay. Move approval with conditions as stated by staff. Do you have a second from Susan? Great. Anything else? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you again. With that, we'll move to item number 6C, public hearing for the neutral project. Encompass properties on request of consideration for precise implementation plan, PIP, for the site located approximately 4601-4711 Monona Drive between Springhaven and Dean Avenue for a mixed-use development, case number 2-016-2021.
So I don't think we have any additional material outside of what's in your packet, unfortunately. So I think I'll just open it up for comments because we're really just looking for feedback that we can take back to design.
Okay. Okay, great. Well, unless there's anybody else here to speak during the public hearing, I'll close the public hearing and go to pre-hearing conference. Item number 6D, pre-hearing conference for the neutral project Encompass Properties on the request for consideration of a precise implementation plan, PIP, for the site located at approximately 4601-4711 Monona Drive between Springhaven and Dean Avenue for mixed-use development, case number 2-016-2021. Doug?
Thank you. I will also jump in here, just glossing over the materials are in the staff report for anyone following along. This will be basically modeled on the GDP that was just recommended for approval. A few things to call out here, specifically the architecture building materials. The masonry exterior has been discussed, the metal shingles, and in terms of the direction for that, but specifically the BMO Harris Bank, the corner of Monona Drive and Dean, shown with the corporate blue painted metal panel facade across the first and second levels. The commission may choose to give feedback for that. Additionally, how the additional commercial spaces on the ground floor, maybe they maintain the masonry facade, or if there is sort of any plans or are any plans for the changes to the facade there as well. In terms of the parking, previous materials discussed the underground bike parking and storage. That was not shown on the materials, so may just be a point for discussion. At one point as well, B-Cycle was mentioned. It sounds like it may be more of a private setup for e-bikes and scooters, but again, something that may be discussed. Additionally, the parking along Springhaven, that's something in terms of possible signage, clarification there. It would be, and maybe Alder Holmquist can correct me here, but it was part of the Public Works Committee approval there that there would be some sort of easement agreement in place for that. So whether that is how that would be signed, if it is truly private parking, or how that would align there for visitor parking, commercial, but just the signage may be a discussion point. Same to the sidewalks as well. Some of the sidewalks located within city right-of-way, maintenance of those, that's definitely a point of clarification that the Public Works Director would like clarified, that would be the responsibility of the property owner, that be stipulated as well. Landscaping is being discussed a lot. A few comments from the GDP about the consideration of parking that's underground as well. The number of points would fall beneath that. For the 172 stalls per city code, it would be looking at 2,500 points, and the current allocation has that right around 850. Staff does certainly recognize the extensive plan that is put forward here, a lot of innovative design that I certainly have not seen at other projects across the city. So that may be something the Commission chooses to discuss, if an exception is warranted for the creative design, and how that maybe can be incorporated moving forward. Additionally, the lighting, there is a photometric plan that was included as the supplemental materials to the packet. Shows a total of 47 light fixtures across the development, all being shielded LEDs. One point of clarification here was that there weren't too many, didn't appear to be too many lights beneath the building, sort of in the drive-through lanes and sort of the areas underneath the building. So it may just be something to clarify that having those well lit and illuminated for both vehicles as well as pedestrians may be a good idea. Additionally, as the PIP is finalized, the stormwater will of course go to the city's consulting engineer for review. Erosion control, utilities, vehicle circulation. That's it for me. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, again, we're just, in the interest of time, this is to provide the neutral project with feedback on the PIP as we know it. This is not to, drill down to the nitty-gritty of everything, but from what we see here. So, Brian, would you like to start?
Sure. I keep hearing the reference to the BMO blue and the floors 1 and 2, but I don't see any image of it to show what that looks like on that elevation. Because all I see is one little strip of blue on one of these. I have no idea. Am I talking like 2-story panels, or are we talking a 12-inch band of metal?
Is it possible for us to share a screen, Doug?
Yes. If you want to join the Zoom meeting.
Yeah, Doug, can you share the BMO rendering that we have?
I'll make him co-host.
Doug, first word, are you there?
Put him to sleep.
Yeah. He knew there was a sign being discussed.
Doug?
Yeah.
Hope he's not charging you.
Yeah.
Can we come back to this?
Yeah.
I was going to say, we could.
Yeah, absolutely. Now I'm drawing on it.
I threw you off.
Yeah.
That was your own point.
Good idea. Let's see. Other than that, the other parts of the building materials, I think there was a good sense of what those were up to this point. This is one of the key items that I just needed a better sense of from building materials. Landscaping, I've already talked about a good chunk of it. I do like the ambitiousness of it. I do like the different approach to the landscape design. I have a really good sense of what is being described of this more elevated kind of concrete plaza with a sunken, and I would agree that like having some differential in that height is the key to that landscaping design. The only thing I can kind of equate it to is a resort I was at one time that had a very similar concept of water flowing through much more of this pedestrian area And it was a kind of a green carpet mix, and there was an intention of, this isn't all about just flowers, it was the simplicity of that. And I think there's something to kind of add to that, which I don't think that is the intention of our ordinance around landscaping plans. So I'd like us to really find a way to help kind of honor the intensity of the landscaping design here with some of the questions and concerns regarding long-term maintenance, but having some kind of appreciation for something that's different than just additional shrubs in grass, which this is not. Lighting, I didn't have any concerns with, and if we talk about lighting under buildings at night for pedestrians, we'll all be able to experience that really soon here. And stormwater, no issues, because that will be coming in the future. So nothing other than that. Oh my. Okay.
Yeah. Is that the valleys that they're talking about?
Also, apologies, my internet went down, but I can share screen and show the more updated renderings if you're interested.
Are these not updated, Doug?
Yes, exactly. These are the most current images.
Wait, the ones I'm sharing. Oh, yeah, okay. That's what I shared.
Thanks.
Okay, I didn't have the right copy.
That's the most current one.
Yeah, that's the most current.
Correct, exactly.
After probably 20 iterations.
So the first.
This would be the signage, and then a light gray brick to go with the branding scheme of BMO, be that either a sourced brick that's actually in the gray tone of their palette, which they have several gray tones, or if not, then a painted brick.
Wow.
So I'll start with the positive. The gray brick, kind of capturing out that space, I think is in fitting of really calling out this is much more commercial space compared to the rest of the building. That entryway to me is what would be on the square downtown with a 15-story or higher building, which then would match. That's a large entryway, and
Correct, because this first floor is much taller than the residential floors. This commercial floor, as you can see in the fenestration.
Yeah, which would make sense for the gray brick, but the BMO blue spanning up that second story.
Yeah.
The commercial space isn't a two-story in that area, right? It's
No,
maintains
but
at one.
it's a single story with a second story call out just simply for the entry of BMO. Sorry, and this is the rear entry that Chris had pointed out earlier.
Yeah.
The impetus of the BMO spaces, we've been through a bunch of iterations. Originally, it was actually wrapped with BMO blue, and we fought pretty hard, and this is what we narrowed it down to. So I don't think we're going to have them probably back off from this. And they own half the site right now, so they don't have to sell to us. And so this is probably not really negotiable.
Does that cover windows on the second floor? I can't even.
So basically, the bump out happens here and here for BMO. It's pushed out for the commercial space, giving them a bit of more of like a jewel box feeling on Monona Drive or on that corner of Monona and D. And then it steps back. You can see here at the drive lanes.
And really the
design rest of the commercial.
The design intent is so that BMO has their quote unquote jewel box space, which they want.
And I think the gray and the step out of that commercial space, I think isn't fitting with what we're looking here from the previous GDP standpoint of like some commercial with residential above and maybe some different kind of pieces. I think it's the entryway that is more of the concern for me is just the big entryway piece. I'll leave it there for now.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think you can stop sharing, Doug.
Well,
Okay.
yeah, I mean, I was going to say I didn't have much more to add to what you've already heard, except for that. It really looks pretty jarring to me. I think it detracts from your overall building, I guess, and maybe if it has to be that way, we'll have to keep thinking about it. I just wonder if it couldn't be a similar idea, but not quite so tall. I mean, are they insistent that it be that two-story
Yeah,
wraparound?
we've gone back and forth since November of last year on this item. So,
And it was either that or that entire what's now gray brick would be, that whole thing would be blue instead.
well, no, it'd be both.
It'd be
they
both.
wanted
Oh,
both,
I see.
yeah.
Okay, well,
Exactly. They wanted all blue, and even more, they wanted a two-story bump out of blue to really make a kind of
It looked terrible. to be honest.
box, and we pushed down to one story of the pump outs, just at the commercial level, and a simple blue corner.
We're not very stoked about it either, to say the least.
okay. Yeah, I'm here to decide which would look better, but okay. Yeah, I think that's all, because we've all already made some comments about landscaping, and that if there's a way to get a little bit more on the drive, that would be good. I don't see you getting to 2,500 points, but I think that we've already talked about the fact that you have a lot of stuff that maybe isn't worth points per se, but they could mitigate against that, so I don't have anything else to add, really.
Thank you.
My turn? Let me just go through right here. Regarding the blue, I think you've been fighting really hard. You should continue to fight. It just blows my mind that they can't look past the end of their noses to see what they're doing to a beautiful building.
Yeah.
And why they can't achieve their brand without defacing a great design. It just blows my mind. So I encourage you to keep fighting for a better solution, but I know that your hands are somewhat tied, but it sounds like you made a lot of progress, so maybe there's room for more. I like the buildings and the massings. Site circulation and connectivity, I think, is good. I have one question about some of the sidewalks in the internal portion of the site. That main access corridor, the parking along that, the perpendicular parking on the east side of that corridor, there is a sidewalk at the end of those parking stalls for half of them roughly, and then it ends. I didn't know if that was by design or why that was like that.
What page do you see that on?
It's on the section. You know what I'm talking about there? Okay.
So you can walk on the sidewalk.
Yeah, it seems like
Comment again?
there's a sidewalk on the back of curb for the perpendicular parking on the main access drive in the interior of the site,
Oh,
and
I
it
see where
only
you're coming
goes halfway through.
Yeah, I gotcha. Yeah, we'll have to fix that. Thank you.
Yep.
Thinking was you could walk along the, you could cross there and then walk over, because there's more concrete pavers along the building there.
So just
Yeah,
to the
sorry,
north. Sorry.
We're gonna,
No, I think what Jeanette said is the
Yeah.
thinking was that we could cross through the concrete pavers and walk along the building. I think that's something we'll probably have to look at though, because that
Okay.
might be something we change. So
Maybe
let's
that's a
take
design
look.
choice and just something that stood out to me. The lighting, it looks like it's all post-op lighting and wall pack lighting. for the-
It's-
based off the photometric plan.
Sorry,
Is it-
if I could interrupt on that, Robert.
Yeah.
The lighting we threw in there because we actually ran out of time before we submitted. So that does not actually align with what we're thinking.
Okay.
We'll have a completely different lighting plan when we come back.
Okay.
Well,
I'm
I'd
going
love
to make
to
my
hear-
comment. I'm going to make my comment.
Yeah, I'd
anyway.
love to hear your suggestion.
There was just the main central area where you have some taller trees, some Amelanchier or something in there. I didn't know if that would if there would be a dark spot kind of in the center of the site, if there wasn't any bollard or pedestrian scale lighting there. Stormwater, and we don't have stormwater plans here, but the bioswales on the northeast corner of the site, generally speaking, the grading plan goes northeast to southwest, as I understand it. So those, can you explain how those are going to work a little bit? Those are going to
So
they're going to have overflows, and how are those going to tie into storm sewer? Or maybe this is too in the weeds for.
It's a little in the weeds right now. We haven't
Okay.
completely vetted the stormwater design at this point. But generally, those would just overflow into the next one and then into that courtyard area where everything would be captured into a storm sewer. Generally, everything flows that way, and it's going to be a pretty complex model to model that with those bioswales and everything generally going down. So it's going to take a deeper dive, but
Okay. You're going to have limited cover, too, crossing the underground parking if you're going to the east with it? Or
generally, I think I want everything to go like south along Winona Drive and then wrap around from, if you're talking just the east side, everything else will go down generally the access drive, drain to that cave drain in the southwest part of the site.
Okay.
So,
and then my other question was the off the backside of the townhouses where you're going to do that rain catchment that goes into the that ribbon curb or whatever that is that just going to drain into the permeable pavement? Is that?
I think that's the ultimate plan. We were playing around with a few options of maybe a rain garden or something by the townhomes, but that just might not be feasible. So I think eventually it will end up draining into the paved drain system.
Okay, it's pretty tight on space there.
Yeah.
Okay, bear with me here. Okay, so my general comments on the overall landscape plan is that I really like the general concept of it. I like all the stormwater features, the water catchment, the green infrastructure that's there. I have some concerns about maintenance, and it's, for example, looking at the Winona Drive frontage, those bioinfiltration basins, those are shown in all the north side, and that whole side. Right now is all shown as complete landscape area. Those are like 25 feet wide, which is like the width of this whole flat side of the room here. Which is great, but I think it has to get, I think getting that grand area established where it looks good, and I think it has to meet a balance of natural yet maintained, where it doesn't look weedy and bushy, and plant selection is going to be very important, and there's going to be what I would assume is a pretty intensive landscape maintenance regimen for the first 3 years of that site. I'm assuming you're using all natives in that area, which is great. I think it could be a real showpiece. It just has to be, that's a big area. That's a wide area of landscaping. And it's flat. I don't know if there could be some verticality in there. I think that could be an added benefit, bringing in some of those shrubs. Potentially, I don't want to design it. I'm not trying to do that, but it's just an observation. When you start thinking about the width of some of those spaces, it's rather large. The ground cover planting in the front plaza space area, and that's going to be, there's limited amount of soil medium that can be there, and that is planned for like sedums, and I don't have the page here. Some other things, I don't know. Salt has to be a consideration, as well as foot traffic. I like the concept as long as it can look good. What I don't want is to have all this investment in a really great idea that isn't protected or can't be maintained, is kind of the point I wanted to make, I guess. One other point was, when it comes to, general point for landscaping points is I'm not concerned. When you're looking at an extensive landscape like this, I think the point system can somewhat go out the window when you look at what's being done here and use common sense. I'm not saying we should get rid of the point system, but the effort and the added benefit is going to be there. But a couple of things, with the crab apples and the hawthorn and serviceberry, I wouldn't consider canopy trees. Those are ornamental trees or larger shrubs, well, not shrubs, but they're ornamental trees. The interior of the site is kind of lacking in any canopy tree, which, as far as shade goes, you have the shade cast by the building, which will provide some shade, ample shade at certain times. So I don't know if there's a spot for a canopy tree or two in the interior of the space, but something to look at. And then,
oh, sorry to interrupt. If we added like Nordic spruce or something like that, would that be considered a canopy tree?
in the interior of the site?
Yeah.
I don't know. No, it's not. It's an evergreen tree, so it wouldn't be considered a canopy tree. Norway spruce is not native, so I don't know if you want to do that.
Or a native spruce, sorry. I'm jumping on landscape. We'll figure it out.
She'll have the answer. Sorry if I'm bogarting here a little bit. I love the black locust decking, especially if you got it sourced already, because it can sometimes be hard to source. It's a pain in the butt to install, but it's great product. I like the garden space idea. There's my other sheet. The existing maples, it'd be great if you could save them. I have my strong doubts that they will survive construction. Yeah, so I'll wrap it up. In general, I think it's a really great concept, and I'm excited to see how it evolves, because it's something that we've not seen here. It's impressive, and I think just there has to be a lot of care and consideration to how it's executed. So, yeah, look forward to seeing the next iteration.
Thanks, Rob. I think you make a really good point about the bioswales on the northeast side, and I think kind of partway through this design, I started to realize how big they are. So that is a lot for just native perennials, and I think adding some vertical tree, shrub along the building side would be a good addition. The problem with the canopy trees in the interior, at least in the plaza area, is again that shallow depth to the roof membrane. So that's why I stayed with the smaller ornamental trees.
Does the garage does it extend past the building footprint?
No. It extends through, in that courtyard area, it extends through between the buildings.
Okay.
But it doesn't extend west.
Okay, so the largest kind of pond area with the boardwalks going over top of it, that has full depth infiltration, correct? Okay.
That is right. That's what you're talking about. You want to
It was a consideration. Like I said, I don't. Maybe there's not a place for that.
So it could. So in place of the service berries, going with something like
But
okay.
I don't know, and I don't know how close those service berries are. If that's going to be an issue with tracking
Not a
berries,
lot of space. Yeah.
You're tracking berries inside. I don't know if that's an issue or not. I don't know how far they're set in or not. Just considerations.
Yeah. Okay. We'll take a look.
And then I just have. I know. Well, I won't No, I won't ask, because you've already said the points aren't an issue, so.
To me, they're not.
Thank you. Kristen?
I don't use the word hate lightly, but I hate the way the BMO Harris thing looks. I feel like it looks as if the entire building is their corporate headquarters or something. I did a quick Google image search of BMO Harris branches, and I did find at least 2 examples where they didn't take over the whole corner of a building. They didn't even do a 2-story sign. Here's one where they did a very small, subtle sign. I think it looks provocative and obnoxious, and I like driving down Dean Avenue, but I won't drive down it if that's the start of Dean Avenue. I mean, so I know they own half the building, as you said, but I would imagine one of the reasons that this project interests them is it's, I don't know, lucrative, or it's, I mean, their place doesn't look so good right now. It's going to look better. I don't think that it needs to be a 2-story blue corner. I was intrigued by, you mentioned like wrapping the blue, which you guys didn't like, but man, if they could just make it a 1-story BMO presence, but perhaps do the wrapping a little bit, that would look better to me than what has just been proposed. I wish it had been included in these renderings. That was kind of shocking. Also, I really do wish you would number your pages, because it's hard to talk to you guys about this. But on this page, I'm changing the subject now.
Can I ask a quick question on that, Chris?
Yes.
What would you like to see with the BMO?
Well, as I said, I not a 2-story, but something that's, I don't know, 1-story, or perhaps like a normal sign like everybody else uses.
If it's 2-story with white brick in their sign, would that be better?
I would say my personal opinion is the blue is so, as I said, provocative. It takes over the entire presence of the building. So for me, it's that sudden blue presence there that I see more than anything. But also the 2-story design. I mean, the windows to either side of that blue are apartments. And
yeah, that's correct.
And so someone's living right next to that thing. I mean, I would never want to live on that corner. And I feel like it's not appropriate to extend the blue up to the 2nd floor when they're not up there. You know, people are sleeping up there. You know, BMO's not up there.
Would it be a correct characterization that you guys would not approve the blue?
I wouldn't. I can't speak for my fellow commissioners. Yeah, it's really bad, really bad. It's getting late, so I'm just going to say one other thing, which is on this page, which I can't tell you the page number.
I haven't pulled up here. That's okay.
I see 3 people sitting in the grass, and that's cute. But I noticed that it doesn't seem like there are any benches.
Yeah, that's not a correct representation of the
was made in a simultaneous fashion to the design of the landscape, so there was not necessarily like an integration of that rendered to the particular landscape scheme that's being proposed. So we would of course consider public benches or seating or things of that
and we'll
use.
Yeah, we'll try to overlay in the next PIP the 2 next to each other so you can understand that better.
Well, and forgive me, I just saw a rendering that did have a kind of a cool half-moon bench system, so that's nice. I guess one last thing is lighting. As you can tell, I'm like a lighting nerd, and every single one of these lights that you mentioned, they look good to me. They end with the letter Y, which apparently means they're 3,000 degrees Kelvin warm.
5,000.
No, Y means 3,000 K warm, and then if it's blank or BL, then it's 5,000 K. So all of the lights are 3,000 K with the exception of the first 3. And then you have 3 more, and then, so there's kind of a mix of different color temperatures, which is kind of schizophrenic and.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
That is not a correct representation
Okay.
of our lighting plan. It was thrown together in a few
Sure.
days, and we'll be digging into that more at our next meeting. So
Thanks.
we'll make
That's
sure
all
they
I
all
have.
have the correct color palette.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. I like lighting as well, Chris.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does not look good. So I was looking over Chris's shoulder, and there was another one where it's like a panel on top of the brick that's blue. So, I mean, it does seem like they are open or have been open in the past to some different things. And when I was looking at the rendering, it goes up to encompass what looks like where your green roof is. Is that a green roof there, or is that a balcony?
No, it is a green roof.
That's the green roof.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you could appeal to their sensibility of the fact that they are cohabiting on this very sustainability-minded project, and the blue is so not in line with the rest of the warmth of the site. I don't know if that would help them maybe rethink it. Or maybe something with the way that the like pillars, if those pillars weren't there, maybe it wouldn't be so, I mean, I don't know if those are structural, I can't remember, but maybe if the pillars weren't there to support that huge whatever that juts out. So I understand that this is how they typically brand, but they're in a community with a sustainability initiative that's trying to do things, and this site is, a little different. So maybe they'd be willing to do something a little different.
Well, and I'm going to go one step further to say that they're in a community that has a sign code, and I don't think this would come close to anything in our sign code. And we don't ignore our sign code just because somebody owns the building. I mean, we just don't. It's why you don't see. So it's a problem.
They have a free focus group here. So,
well, we'll bring them next time. They can
all
debate.
not in favor. And then the only other thing that I was thinking of when I was looking at this, and it's just for your consideration. I don't know if it would make sense or look good or not, but I really like the locust decking. I think that's a really neat way to design this. But I guess, kind of to Chris's point, I wonder if putting a pergola on one or two of those and then having some seating underneath it just for another place to sit, and then it would be like dappled shade as opposed to like building shade or no shade over in the garden area. So just, it would give like a different, and it would give some of that vertical, because a lot of it is very, very, like the prairie, I mean, it's going to be, 3 or 4 feet or whatever, but I mean, there's nothing really that tall. There's not the canopy trees like Rob was saying. So maybe doing some structural thing like that would give it a little bit of visual variability.
Okay. Yeah, we will consider that.
Anything else, Court? No. Chris?
Yeah, it's unanimous. That thing's garish. It's horrible. And I would agree with the chair. I'd consider the whole thing a sign. It would be way over our sign code. They have to do something else. They don't have anything like that on their existing building or on that drive-through there. So I guess, hopefully you were watching the faces of all the plan commissioners when you showed that for the first time, because I was, and it was unanimous.
was audible.
It was a couple. We, of course, are going to need full civils when this comes back, and I think I'm getting the sense of this is you pretty much just put what you had in here for tonight because you want to have a pre-hearing and you want to be able to come back and get your approval, so this is all timing, so don't pay a lot of attention to what we have because it was just to say that you had a submittal.
Got it.
Yes?
I mean, we value your opinion.
I'm pretty close, though, are I not? Okay.
And the lighting, anyway. Right? Yeah.
From what I do see here, if you could, when you look at that southwest lot, maybe get that slid a little further off Gordon if you can, because it would be nice to have some green space and ability to actually landscape it from, a major parking lot to those homes that are immediately west of it. So it looks like you might have a little room there that you could do that and just maximize that space so we could soften it to the residential. Other than that, I think I've given you most of my comments.
And we'll look at the facade on the townhomes as well.
Absolutely. I think a little variability there, variance would add to the impact, the allure of the place.
Yeah, I do have a quick question, and this is for the whole commission. Is there a possibility that we could send a few renderings of the BMO space as a poll to get everyone's opinion, or is that not feasible?
Well, I think, I guess in my view, feel free, commission members, if you disagree, but I mean, our sign code's very clear about the size of the sign, in this kind of a scenario. And so it seems to me a place to start would be just to be providing BMO with what meets our...
How much of it would be considered the sign? Would it be, it wouldn't be the entire blue area, right?
I would consider the entire blue area.
The way it is now, I would consider it the entire blue area.
That's literally there to draw attention.
The thing, I don't think their project manager is going to see it that way.
Yeah, I don't know that
and
I see it that way. I mean, I think it looks awful. I guess my question, have they seen the rendering and what that looks like?
Yeah, we've iterated on this 14
and they think that looks good. I just can't imagine that they...
That's why I'm asking a question, because we've been rendering every single time. So we're putting the work in because they want to see it.
Right.
So we'll go back to them based on these comments, and we'll iterate with them, but there's probably going to be another 4 or 5 different options. If we could get a poll from the commission saying this is likely going to be approved, that will help us with our argument with them.
Well, I mean, I can certainly concur with Chris that there's no way I would get anywhere near those apartments, and I probably wouldn't. Seriously, last thing I would want to be able to do is look out my window and see a bright blue on the second floor there. I mean, it's just, yeah.
Well, just to answer his question about a poll, we're required by state statute to meet in public and discuss things. We're not allowed to send, I like this one, do you like that one?
Yeah.
That's illegal for us to do.
Right.
All our discussions have to be here.
Can we come back here outside of PIP to discuss
Absolutely.
it? Okay.
Sure.
Okay, I think we'll take you up on that.
But we just can't do a private
No, that's fine.
and send information back and forth.
Yeah.
Would it be a part of a sign package for the site, though? Or would it be like a separate?
It's even architectural. I mean, we approve architectural, and that's architectural.
Okay.
Architecturally hideous. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I think everything, the BMO, the actual sign is their letters and logo, but they have this whole jewel box space that is technically structural, so I don't think it's a sign. I think that's actually part of PIP.
Well, we've had the discussion here when there is a background of the sign, and the intention here is not just the logo and the letters. If that were, the brick is the same color as all the other brick on the building. But they're saying no, they want the entryway specifically blue, and so they're dictating the color of the background of the sign to put their logo and letters on. That's why you're hearing us talk about that whole thing as a sign, because they're wanting that whole piece.
Even though it's metal panel? Even though it's, because the facade is metal panel, right? That's not the backing of the sign, that's the actual facade system. So you're saying that's considered as the sign?
In this case, it's functioning as a sign.
Okay.
I think another, well.
I'm not going to argue.
Yeah, I'll put it out this way too. I did the street view of the BMO Harris on the square. Do you think it has an entryway like this? No.
Where's the BMO? Oh yeah, it's in the historic building. No, it's in a historic building. I don't think it could.
Why not?
Well, it's because it's historic.
This will be.
I like the thinking, Chris. That's great.
Well, it may not be historic, but I just want to say again, I mean, we know that you all have worked really hard, and you know, kudos to you and to architects for working as hard as you have to make a building that we're all really pretty excited about in terms of the massing and the materials and all that kind of stuff, and then to have that go on the front of it, it completely goes against. Otherwise, the whole kind of culture and kind of aesthetic of.
Yeah.
I mean, you've developed this really great aesthetic, and then put that sign on it. It just doesn't work.
Okay. You did ask, like, what are some of the things that we might want to see instead of that? So one of the things mentioned was, okay, if that the Jubilee box idea of that lighter gray brick, if this front entryway was that lighter gray brick and the logo and the letters were similar and there was maybe a slight band above where the drive aisles of the 3 exiting had a sign and logo, that to me is much more in alignment with the building overall.
Okay.
It eliminates the blue shock, which I think is the biggest piece, and it would still kind of honor and appreciate their signage, and this is our main entryway, those pieces.
Yeah.
Another point that came up, and I'm switching subjects just for a second, because I don't want to forget, and it had to do with the park on the southwest corner. There does need to be landscaping for the headlight glare.
So more along Gordon Street.
Yeah, so those headlights are pointing into the residential. That would all need to make sure that there's adequate landscaping in front of all of those pieces.
Maybe we'll add our spruces there, native spruces.
Is that not canopy then, like with low?
Well, the whole idea there, like, we've talked about hedges before, we've talked about other types of landscaping. The issue is just to address the headlights that would be shining right across the street. So you can have stuff that's higher than that too, but you just gotta make sure you take care of the headlight.
Would spruces do it?
Okay.
No, not really. I'm growing a little baby spruce, that's why.
When it's a baby spruce, it might.
I'm sorry, I was so shocked by that
I know.
little thing. I lost my train of thought. But when you mentioned other commercial spaces, I still expect those all to be brick, match the facade of the rest of the building.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
They'll have to go through their sign submittal by themselves. We're not doing that for them.
And, you know, I mean, I could, again, because we have a sign code and that we follow, I can also say that, you know, it's not like BMO is the only national entity that we've dealt with here. We dealt with every single other corporate entity that's here in Monona. I mean, you know, including Metro Mart, you know, I mean, it doesn't matter that they're a big fish.
Let me ask this question.
Yeah.
If we separate this out into a separate, like, sign submittal, would that be better? And then we can have PIP just run forward without this being a part of it, and it just be essentially wrapped with our facade, and then BMO would come back for a separate submittal.
We often do separate sign packages for development, for sure, but my concern is the way it is right now. You said it's
Architectural.
It's part of your structure, is it not?
Well, it's structural, but it's not like part of the actual structure of the building.
Are you saying that you would come in with your PIP and show it not blue and leave it up to BMO Harris to come in and show it as blue?
We would just wrap it with our facade, and then we'd have BMO come back by themselves
So,
to get
white
approval for
brick?
what they need, whatever that is.
Gray brick?
No, I'm not going to speak for
First floor brick or the
BMO.
second floor brick?
I'm not going to speak for BMO on any of it. I'm just going to say we're coming in with our facade, which would be what we presented, right? We continue that.
The gray brick, I mean, it's through
No.
the entryway. You
No,
have to have an entryway,
no,
though.
We're literally just going to take what we have as our facade outside of the BMO entrance and bring that over and pull it across. And then we'll get approval with that. And then BMO, the corporate, can come back to you guys and get approval for whatever they need. I don't know if they're going to agree with this.
Part of the PIP is approving the facade.
Yeah.
So
Right.
if we have the same brick, everything coming around there, that's what we were all expecting. That's
Right.
where we're all shocked tonight.
Right.
But don't give BMO the impression that we're going to approve a bunch of blue banding all around their whole frontage or something.
Yeah, no, we won't. Yeah. Oh, they can speak for themselves and come back and try to get approval for what they want.
Can I say something?
Yes.
The building is really cool.
Right.
And this is an opportunity for BMO to do something elegant and appropriate, and instead this is super obnoxious and dumb, and everyone's going to hate it in Monona. Everyone's going to hate it.
Yeah.
And so BMO could instead, propose a much smaller sign that's architecturally appropriate, scaled appropriately, and it would look good. And it would look like it's their building, but it would still be subtle and elegant.
Yeah.
You know.
It's a classy building, and it just looks like it's just blue party.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to be clear. No, I'm not going to comment on the design. But if you come through for PIP approval and it looks like a beautiful building that you guys designed, that's great. But BMO cannot come in and expect to have what essentially would be a structural sign. It would be like a pylon sign.
Yeah.
And that will not that's forbidden on Monona Drive. So they will have no structure. They will only be able to work with the facade that is provided. Just to be clear.
Which would look nice.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. It would be a big
They can propose painting or whatever they want to do, but they got to work with the facade that was approved, not a structural sign, which would be considered a pylon sign.
That is understood.
Okay.
We felt the same way you guys all feel, right, when this came along, and our architects were very mad that they had to do this blue box, right? But I think now we have some pressure from you guys, which is good. That might help us.
You have a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think we might go the direction of just getting PIP approved and letting them come back, just like all the other tenants, for sign approval.
Okay.
So, but we'll consult with BMO and get back to Doug on this item.
No. Great. Yes.
One last piece. One more thing. There are times that if you have dedicated commercial space, sometimes there's a way to kind of put it within the facade of the appropriate spot to put signage, and it's called out by how the facade is captured and giving appropriate spaces above those commercial spots for signage to be included.
Yeah, we'll have that, and we'll have, like for the other tenants, we'll have tie-ins on specific points for
Yeah.
signage. Yeah, we've already planned to do that.
Well, sometimes there's even some architectural design that really captures, this is the only place that you would be able to put the sign.
Yeah. There. Yeah, we'll talk about that.
Great. Thank you.
Good thought.
Okay, and with that, we're going to go to reports of staff and commission members.
I'll try and be quick. A couple updates to share with the commission. The development agreement for the Besa project, the Monona Garden project, was approved last week at City Council. And so that is they're looking to break ground spring 2023, so that is moving forward. Pleased to give that information. In terms of upcoming items, afraid to say it's going to be a busy couple of meetings, a couple pre-hearings coming forward. The former Rutabaga space, they're going to be coming back for another pre-hearing. Change in site concept based upon the feedback, based upon just kind of some of the work they've been doing. So that'll be coming forward at the next meeting, as will a revised plan for the St. Teresa for that multifamily project on the corner of St. Teresa and Monona Drive. Additionally, we've got a residential CSM that will be coming forward for a lot combination on Tony Awatha, as well as a pre-hearing for some signage over at Floor and Decor, a potential pylon sign facing the Beltline. There's some concepts there they would like to discuss over at Southtown, as well as the zoning permit for a new business use as well. So upcoming meetings, November 28th and December 12th. I did just want to mention, certainly December 26th, regular meeting will be canceled, and most likely January 9th as well. I'll probably be out on leave, so just trying to coordinate schedules moving forward. So that's why the next two will probably be pretty busy, but looking further out, those next two will probably be canceled as well. Thank you.
Just a couple of things, if we could remember that came up tonight. The next time these guys come back, use the whole page. I mean, really, this size would not be horrid if they were using the whole page.
That's right.
But I'm with Chris. It's like they're putting 8.5 by 11 sheet in the middle of the.
It almost seems deliberate, like they don't want us to see it.
Because they're using a 42 by 32. It's a standard architect size sheet.
But it would be nice if they gave us scalable drawings too.
Yes.
Yeah, and also page numbers.
That should be a requirement.
Yeah. So just real quickly before we get to the other things, I want to take a poll of everyone here. It is going to be a crazy few months because we have the holiday. We still have a lot of development proposals that are kind of in the pipeline, and we have holidays. And as Doug said, he's going to be on leave, which means that this length of meeting is probably not going to be unusual. I've easily won. Right. So what would people think of starting a little bit earlier?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah?
I go to bed at 9 o'clock.
Me too. We all do. I mean, that's the thing. We got, huh?
I said not me.
Okay. Well, we have a lot of early risers there. But,
Yeah.
could you do
6
earlier?
Yeah, 6 would be, earlier would be fine with me.
Could you do 6?
Yeah, 6 would be fine.
6?
But does it mean we should still go till 10 or 10:30?
No.
Is the space available at 6?
I'll check, but I'm almost certain. Yeah. And I'll check if we can get community media. But
I think they prefer it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard on them too. So okay, let's go with 6.
Yeah.
I appreciate everybody's consideration, and make sure we check with Brandon too.
Yes.
But let's plan on for upcoming meetings moving it back so that we do it. So
Make sure you highlight it when you send the email.
Yes.
any updates on diversity, equity, inclusion,
Nothing from
or
staff.
sustainability? Don't have anything either. We've already talked about upcoming meetings.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the market rate stuff, and that Christy did too. I mean, I've seen projects where they do a mix of market rate and low-income housing, and developers get low-income housing tax credits, and it can be very lucrative for them too.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. So, any other requests for information?
Sorry, I didn't understand it, but just 2 quick questions. Well,
Yeah.
a question and a comment. The gentleman on Femrite that was going to have army vehicles and everything, what's happening? There's nothing there. the landscape ripped out, it sits there, there's no vehicles?
He's on my list. It's about all I can say.
I thought you wanted to occupy it right away. There's nothing there. It looks like it's deserted.
Yeah, I need to follow up. He's on the radar.
Okay,
Certainly.
thank you. And then, probably inappropriate comment. I know we follow Robert's rules. We have a set way we do all this, but perhaps, if some person has to wait for all this and he's just got to sign approval.
Yeah.
I know we have to list it the way you did, Doug, but we could ask to take it out of order because that poor guy that really had to sit there. And we know it's something real simple. I know, Doug, you can't do it. We have the order, we have to do it. But perhaps at the beginning of the meeting, Nancy, you could ask if we could take it out of order or something.
We actually have that as
I should have done that, and actually,
we have that as an agenda item on our school board meetings for the same reason, because our attorney advised us that when it's a public meeting, you should really follow your order, because the public's expecting that. And if there's something they want to listen to, they want to be able to guess approximately when it's going to be. But if you put an agenda item that says consideration of order, and most times we just skip it, it gets read, there's no reason to change anything. But we have occasionally somebody who comes in from Milwaukee and they have to drive home, and they have the same thing, they have to be in the logical Roberts order. It's down further, and we just agree as a board to move them up. I don't know if that's necessary here, but it could be an automatic thing every meeting. If there's nothing that needs to be moved up, fine. If there is, move it up.
Thanks.
Yeah, I agree. And, typically, too, I think you're pretty good at letting people know you're not going to be on for an hour.
That's where Zoom helps as well.
Right?
Yeah, oftentimes if it's one of those, I'll say join in the background on Zoom, at home, and join when you're needed. But yeah, that certainly I can look into how the school board does it. I think that would be with these where feedback has been received on development projects, where we should tee those up in chunks as we did tonight, but it certainly creates a bit of a jam for the others. So.
It does. I like Susan's suggestion, though, that there's something on our agenda that says an item may be taken out of order somehow.
Thanks.
Right. Anything else?
Move rule, or move dismissal.
Second.
Approval of adjournment.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Oh, 10:30.